more realistic.
Much more. You know, I'm not surprised that he's getting better. Bush practices constantly.
And Laura Bush says he's more focused than ever, locks himself away for hours at a time and won't talk to anyone while he's painting.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if history will look back on Bush as a politician or the next Rembrandt. Up next, a study found that drinking red wine once a day can help the body get hammered.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Welcome to Free Talk Live. Phones are open. However, we do have a special guest on the line, so if you're calling in about something unrelated to our guest, then you're going to have to hold out. You're going to have to wait until whenever we are done with that, which we will be, I'm sure, at some point, that we can get to the news and the comments and the usual open phones that we do here on Free Talk Live 7 nights a week. Big news today in the world of cryptocurrency. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is now going after the biggest cryptocurrency exchange on the planet, Binance. And this is, by the way, following the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, already suing Binance like a month ago. So Binance is now tied up with both of the federal regulatory agencies who are claiming jurisdiction over cryptocurrencies in massive, massive lawsuits. So that's still to come here.
And every little thing
tonight.
the U.S. government does in this regard, it just makes them look more and more like a desperate animal backed into a corner, lashing out because it doesn't know what else to do.
They are all of those things. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
And we know they're violent. We know they're desperate. We know they're evil. And that's one of the reasons why we all moved here to New Hampshire, as part of a freedom migration that has been going on here for about 20 years. And we're going to talk about the Porcupine Freedom Festival with the organizer of this year's and previous Porcupine Freedom Festivals. His name is Dennis Pratt, calling us from Dover, the east side of the state, the seacoast area of New Hampshire. Welcome, Dennis.
Hello, Ian, Bonnie, and Aria.
How's it going, Dennis?
That's the problem with living all the way over here, is that we can't actually get over to Keene all that easily.
No, it's 2 hours. It's
Even
like in New Hampshire,
Concord
2 hours
same
is
thing.
just so far away.
I mean, it's not, but you don't want to do it regularly, right?
No, it is a lot of gas to get over there. But it's good to have you here. We've talked, of course, we've had John from to talk about Porcfest before, although I think this is the first time we've brought you in via our video option, which we now have. You look good. You can watch our video feed, by the way, over at watch.freetalklive.com. And we've talked about some of the things that are going on at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is really hard to get a hold of because there's hundreds and hundreds and maybe even 1,000+ events that are happening there. This is, of course, what I've called in recent days or recent weeks the world's most, I guess, popular Liberty event. I think it has outstripped Anarchapulco. I think for a time Anarchapulco had that title as far as the number of attendees. And I think that within the last couple of years, the Free State Project's Porcupine Freedom Festival, the summertime camping festival that happens here every year for the last 20 years, this will be the 20th one, has knocked out Anarchapulco. Well, you guys hit close to, what was it, 3,000 people last year?
Yeah, no, we had about 2,700 tickets, and we had about 1,900 come through, or at least register at the gate. So it's always hard because a lot of people don't even bother registering. They just come and enjoy the festival throughout the whole place.
Yeah, that sounds like libertarians. And I choose to call it the world's premier libertarian festival because then I don't have to worry about I don't have to worry about popularity or numbers or anything like that. I'm just like, hey, this is the biggest and best, I guess.
It's the only one that's really meaningful. I mean, I'm not trying to down what other people do. Anarchapulco is a great party in Mexico if you're looking for a fun, excuse to get out of the United States and go have a blast down south. I mean,
but from what we learned from the Anarchists, the HBO thing, it doesn't seem like they have as much of an actual community that goes on there that we have in New Hampshire.
That's the point I was driving at, is that Porcupine Freedom Festival is the most meaningful libertarian event.
I mean, it's the best sleepover with your friends that you can have.
You're referencing the prosecution's objection to why I can't go this year, at least for the whole thing. But it's meaningful because there's an actual community that is in the thousands. Now, Anarchapulco, it might have been in the dozens at one point, but I don't think it ever cracked, 100 people or whatever living down there. And of course, that's a city of hundreds of thousands of people.
That's another thing that made me really question why they chose that place. Sure, get away.
I think
and
it was
go
just
to
Jeff Berwick,
Mexico.
honestly. I think it was, and that's the other thing with some of these other, let's call them projects or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, Move Here projects that are out there that have been competing with the Free State Project. Is a lot of them are sort of cult of personality projects where there's this one, personality that is attracting a certain type of individual, and they come to follow that one person. I think Blue Ridge Liberty was a good example of this, which is where people moved to
Virginia?
Was it Virginia?
Yeah, the Blue Ridge Mountains are in Virginia.
No, I think it was North Carolina.
Oh,
I think it was.
Maybe they go through all of it.
It was Asheville, North Carolina. There was several dozen people that moved there.
Boy, you're going to do a lot with several dozen people.
Because
that's the problem
guy.
with all of these migration projects, and it makes me irrationally angry. Actually, it's rationally angry because it's futile and it's effort. But people hear about the Free State Project and go, "That's great. Let's do Free State Louisiana or Free State Florida." Hey, how about instead of immediately going and trying to do your own thing, you join us doing our already successful and in progress thing, and we don't divide our energy across. I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well just vote for the National Libertarian Party as all of your activism, because the two things are just as effective.
It's constant. I don't understand how you can understand that concentration means concentration.
It seems so basic. And Dennis, I've seen you on Twitter. You're dealing with these objections all the time.
Yep,
I mean, how frustrating is it for you as activist of the year, I think, of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance last year, to look online and see libertarians struggling so hard for absolutely no reason, and then to completely not get it when it comes to this movement.
Okay, so this is my 42nd year of libertarianism. I spent a lot of time slamming my head up against the wall. And so my heart actually goes out to a lot of these people. And I understand the concern and the desire that they don't have to move. Wouldn't it be nice if I could have a Free State Project right in my backyard? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. I don't have to move. I don't have to change jobs. I don't have to
leave your friends.
I don't have to convince, if they are my friends. By the way, what is the language? What is the language requirements on this program?
Oh, we're on the radio, so when in doubt, leave it out. I would say is the best way to approach it.
Okay, and am I on a delay? Because
no, I mean you're on a delay on the radio. So if you were to screw up, we can save it. We can stop.
Okay.
We can stop it, but we prefer not to have to hit the dump button. So we have a 5-second delay here. So
okay, thank you. Just I would like to have a little bit of cushion there because I may mess up because are they really your friends? Can authoritarians be your friends?
Wasn't this your topic of your rant last year at Porcfest?
There was the topic of my rant
Moved to
2
the
years
homeland.
ago, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, last year was come and build a libertarian homeland.
That's right.
2 years ago was They're Not Your Effing Friends.
That's it. As you know, it left a mark on me. I remember that one very, very well.
Well, as was revealed, I suspect you were referring to COVID, revealing that many of these people who you might have gone to the bar with after work or whatever in whatever city you lived in actually were turning against people who were of a liberty mindset and turning them out from their friends groups, specifically because they wouldn't get a COVID shot or they wouldn't wear a mask or whatever, right? Was that part of the inspiration for that?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody does not respect you as a human being, does not respect you as an autonomous, sovereign person, can they actually be your friend? If they believe that they can enslave you through a proxy government, can they actually be your friend? Or do they see you in some fashion as a psychopath sees you, as a tool of their desire for some sort of benefit in the future? So yeah, that was my rant 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean, each year I have a good rant. So
yeah, that's true. I'll vouch for that.
So you got caught up in organizing the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and and that is something I would
entrapped.
Not wish,
I think entrapped.
Yeah,
is the
and I've
word.
said this to you before. I would not wish that on anyone because it is having organized some things myself. I used to put together a much smaller event called Keenvention out here a few years before the feds raided us the first time, and that just basically made me say, you know what, I don't have time for this. But we did a few of them out here, and so knowing a little bit about organizing an event, there's a lot going on, especially one the size of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. There's always a lot of plates that are spinning all at the same time, and you as the primary organizer, you have to kind of deal with all that. Now, you started out, I think, in a different role. Weren't you kind of like an assistant organizer when the Paxtons were doing Porcfest several years ago, and you kind of worked your way up?
That's right. I just moved here, and I was looking for kind of a place to set up. Luckily, Jessica Paxton was looking for somebody to take over a large part of her particular year. And I came in, and I was really, what I wanted to do is I wanted to shift us more towards highlighting porcupines, highlighting what we were doing. I had just moved here, and so I went around and just basically started going and saying, who's doing what? And I was going around interviewing people and saying, hey, would you mind talking about that at Porcfest? And so we actually had one of the highest porcupine-led Porcfest ever, and that's how I made my mark. It was really more feeding my own curiosity about what was going on here and thinking that we really should be offering that at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And everyone loved it. The porcupines loved it, but also, even more importantly, our real target segment, the target segments that, the movers. I mean, you say I'm organizer. I really kind of consider myself a redesigner of Porcfest. And I made some very significant changes over the years to Porcfest. Repositioning it, redesigning it, retargeting it. That's basically my background is in the design of new products, and I use those techniques to really kind of go after people who were kind of ignored. And on all my measures, I'm very high. It's been extremely successful. We're more than double the size of Porcfest before, more than 7 times the number of events. And even more importantly, the things that I was really concerned with was that amongst the really hardcore libertarians, the Free State Project and Porcfest just were not elements, were not things that they were thinking about. And now we are, much more commonly talked about. It's become one of these things where they're really fear of missing out. And I'm very happy with how we've used that. There's been a couple of other elements of that thing of kind of getting away from the Cato and Reason segments and moving more towards
the Beltway libertarian types, you mean?
That's right. Yeah. And my argument originally was that, these are not our targets. We should not be targeting these people. They're easy. They're easier to get. These smaller segments are much harder to get. But the more that we go after the secessionists, the Freedom Cells, the Mises Caucus, people like that, the anarcho-capitalists, the people, the more that we're going after them rather than the people who are arguing 32% versus 28% taxation, 32% versus 28%. If you think that that's your core issue, you're not moving. I can tell you right there, right now. We should leave you. We should not be expending our resources there. We should be expending the resources of people who understand that libertarianism is ultimately an abolitionist movement. That is what we're doing. We are taking the last step. We've gotten rid of, purportedly we've gotten rid of private chattel slavery. We still have this 6,000-year history of slavery to rulers. And everyone thinks, except libertarians, everyone thinks that that's acceptable. And that's our goal. The people who really, really desire that, those are the people I want to move here. People who are more conservative, I think there's great places in Florida and Texas to move to, Indiana, Idaho, And the progressives, they have lots of great states.
I mean, if you're conservative, there's just no reason to work on a project to get people together. Just move to Texas. Texas is great for conservatives right now. No work to be done.
Right. They hate personal freedoms in Texas. So I got to agree so far with everything that you've said, Dennis. I totally agree that content at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, at least on the official stage, because there's all kinds of unofficial things going on out there, should be focused on porcupines, specifically people here in New Hampshire. And I got to agree that we shouldn't be pandering to the Beltway libertarians. So far, we completely agree on this. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on was because there have been so many disagreements, as there always are. I mean, this has been going on since long before Dennis Pratt organized the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
I mean, look, a week ago, you, me, and Bonnie had a mild disagreement about whether or not touching someone on the shoulder it constitutes aggression. Like libertarians love.
We had it out about that
arguing.
So yeah, and I want to get into some of that here, but I want to get a little bit more of your background. You said you just moved just several years ago. When did you come up here, and where did you come from?
So I had I'm born and raised in New York City.
Oh God, so sorry.
Very troubled teen in Jersey.
You don't sound like you're from New York City.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah, I'm from Manhattan.
Okay,
which is a little bit different from Brooklyn.
I see.
Different from Queens.
Yep.
Different from Long Island. I used to have this debate with all the college people. I went to college I went undergrad and grad at Northwestern and grad at MIT. But at Northwestern, there were a lot of people from Long Island, and they would say, "You're not from New York. You can't be from New York," and because they all had that very Long Island type of sound. I said, "I'm from the only place that you can put New York, and it actually arrives. The letter actually arrives."
Okay.
Wow.
But yeah, there's different accents throughout the entire city.
So you must have been within the libertarian community there at the time. You said you were 40+ year libertarian, so you must have been active in the city, right? What was that like?
No. I was a democratic socialist for my teen years and my early, basically through 22, 23 or something like that. So no, I was very strong on the left, very anti-war. Mm-hmm. That's really where I come from. I came from the anti-war left, and that's why I'm so upset with what the left has been doing with
they left the anti-war thing behind.
And it's just I have to say I think that a lot of the libertarians have left. I mean, I go, how can we be in our third decade and this still is going on? And it's not really a third decade. This constant war has been going on for so long, and I can't stop it. It is something that just bothers me so much. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was my background. I was working out of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I was probably the only Democratic. I was probably the only socialist at the Mercantile Exchange.
That's like trading. Wall Street, right? That's a Wall Street job.
No, it's trading commodities.
Okay.
So I was actually arbitraging gold across different markets between the New York market and the Chicago market. My boss left to he left to start up a company. The first person he hired was me, which was really interesting because he was like it's arch conservative and he knew I was like this democratic socialist. We basically argued. So we would be in a startup situation 7 days a week, long hours, and the way we would take breaks would be arguing like you guys arguing. But what was very strange was that we both really were logically consistent. That would really matter to us. And so when the other person pointed out a logical inconsistency, we would we couldn't let it go.
I think that's the thing that is why libertarians like to quote unquote argue, is because we all practice being logical and it's fun for us. Like I hate when people point it out and try to say like libertarians there's always drama. It's like sure, sometimes there's drama in every group at any time you look at them, but I don't think it's necessarily that libertarians like quote unquote drama. I think that it's like we like to talk out arguments. Like we've been thinking about this for years or whatever, and now we want to talk it out with somebody and can you break my logic? Nope, I win. I mean, it's fun.
Well, one of the problems, of course, is on Twitter, you don't have a real conversation with somebody most of the time.
Exactly.
And somebody then it ends snipes in a point, and then somebody else...
Or just the internet in general. Whenever you're texting over text...
Well, Twitter in particular, and that's one of the reasons I love Twitter, because it's got the 280 character limit, and whoever
unless you pay them, then
yes,
you
and
4,
whoever
000.
allowed that should be fired.
Yeah,
it should be a hard limit of 200. If you can't say it within 280 characters, it doesn't belong on Twitter.
I'm pretty sure that was Elon Musk.
Then fire him. I don't care to use Twit longer or the thread unravel thing or the click to show more thing. Take that crap to Facebook or Tumblr or WordPress or Blogspot or wherever. Just not for the literal micro-blogging site that is meant for shorter messages. Because it trains people where they don't have to learn to condense their message into fewer words. So they can just ramble endlessly and say in 4,000 words something that could have been said in 40.
Well, that said, there are some problems when you don't have the ability to express yourself fully. Let's see. So you were in New York City. You started as a socialist, which kind of makes sense, right? You're surrounded by that probably.
I started as a communist. Well, not really, but I was once a communist.
And that changed for you at some point. Can you kind of take us back to that point in your 20s?
Well, that was during this startup, and so he was economically conservative, but he was definitely Pax Americana, and he was also not into body freedom. I was, but very heavy body freedom, and you got to end these damn wars. And I thought that the money should just all flow to the government, and we give it out equitably.
When you say body freedom, what do you mean?
Well, that you own your own body. That's how I would frame it today. I wouldn't have framed it then.
Right.
That's the libertarian ethics.
I guess,
coming through.
What aspect of that was he against? Like, was he pro-life or against tattoos or what?
Yeah, he would be. He laws against drugs, laws against how you use your body.
I see.
So he actually thought that you ought to be able to create laws to enforce cultural norms.
Oh God.
Right.
He's conservative.
And so,
yeah, it's conservative.
He's conservative. He was an arch conservative. But I mean, it's funny because I actually dislike Twitter. I know Ari just made a big case for it because I don't think that Twitter is something that can actually convince people or explain what this gigantic paradigm shift is for libertarianism.
Well, you're a big Quora guy. You used to be like one of the top libertarian people on Quora.
I was the top.
Right? Yeah.
I was the top writer of libertarian on Quora. And I wrote lengthy pieces, but it was all, yes, I understand how hard this is. Let me take you by the hand and lead you through it.
But Dennis, I've told you before, I really like how you communicate on Twitter because you have these little short sentences that almost get pieced together, and then you can understand a lot from the things you've chosen to highlight. Basically, I don't know, you have a way of making something say a lot more than the letters that you have there.
And to be fair, I don't have any issue with like longer messages. I just don't think that Twitter is the place for it.
All right.
That's all.
Stand by, Dennis. We're going to continue here. Dennis Pratt is with us. He is the current boss over at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. What does that actually mean, though? What sort of things does he have control over at this festival? Because one of the things that was done right with the Porcupine Freedom Festival in recent years is there's been heavy decentralization. I think that was the right choice. We'll talk about it coming up.
My name is Angel Rach. I'm a mother of 2 teenage children, and I fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to use the medicine that saved my life. I've been permanently disabled for 10 years, with an inoperable brain tumor, wasting syndrome, and several other serious conditions. For 4 years, I was in a wheelchair, in so much pain I couldn't even hug my kids. The hardest part was looking in their eyes and seeing how much they were suffering because of my medical condition. The medicine that gave me my life back and gave my kids their mom back was cannabis, also known as medical marijuana. With medical marijuana, I can walk, maintain my weight, and I can be a mom. Without it, my doctors believe that I would die. To learn more about medical marijuana, contact Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. Ukraine claims to have launched offensive actions in the east of the country, raising speculation that a long-anticipated counter-offensive is underway. Russia, meanwhile, says it successfully prevented a large-scale attack, killing hundreds of Ukrainian troops. But Kyiv says such information should be viewed critically, accusing Moscow of spreading fake information to demoralize Ukrainians and mislead the Russian population. Stuart Smith has more on what's being claimed in Moscow, where wartime censorship means only official information can be reported.
The Russian Defense Ministry implied on Monday that Ukraine's counter-offensive had begun, with action on 5 fronts, but that Ukrainian forces achieved, quote, no success. Further, it said up to 700 Ukrainian soldiers were killed. It also claimed pro-Ukrainian forces had again attempted to penetrate Russia's Belgorod region, and again claimed no violation of the state border was achieved.
Officials in India say a train crash that killed at least 275 people was likely caused by a signalling error. The Indian government has said a detailed report will be released soon. Ishan Garg is in Bhubaneswar, outside a hospital where the bodies are being brought in.
What we understand so far is that a system that is responsible for making the trains switch tracks, there was some issue with that system. It's still unclear if it was because of human interference or if it was because of technical glitches. But the railway minister has said that those details will come out as the investigation progresses. Now, what we are also hearing from the railway board and the railway ministry is that they have asked India's topmost investigative agency, the Central Bureau of Investigation, to investigate this case, which means that they're also possibly looking at a criminal angle.
Former US President Mike Pence has filed paperwork to launch his run for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. The documents were submitted to the Federal Election Commission. He's expected to personally launch his bid on Wednesday. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Mike Pence, who served as Donald Trump's vice president, may face an uphill battle to win the support of a party who is still largely loyal to his former boss. Their once close alliance imploded after Pence refused to help Trump's efforts to overturn his loss to President Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Mike Pence's poll numbers have mostly hovered around the low to mid-single digits, whereas Donald Trump continues to lead the pack. The former vice president is expected to bring a more traditional conservative voice to contrast the populist preachings of Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
And Apple has unveiled an augmented reality headset. It's the company's first big hardware launch in nearly 10 years. CEO Tim Cook says the product seemingly blends the real world and the virtual world. From bureaus worldwide, this is FS.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are not quite open all the way. I mean, you can call in if you have a question about the Porcupine Freedom Festival, I would say, as Aria pointed out, the world's premier liberty-oriented festival that goes on. It's bigger than any libertarian convention. It's not a convention because it's not in a hotel. It's at a campground. It's at Rogers Campground. And it's coming up. We didn't even mention this. Porcfest.com is, of course, where you can go because tickets are still available at this, as I understand it, at least as of the last time I was watching Free State Live.
My friends got theirs about a month ago.
Yeah, so Dennis, give us a ticket update. What are we looking at? Dennis Pratt is with us here. It's Ian Bonney and Aria in the studio tonight. How the sales coming along?
Yeah, so when I first redesigned it, well, I was the first couple of years I was testing things, and then I redesigned it, and I remember telling the group over at Porcfest. I'm hoping that we're talking about the Telegram group there, and I would tell them, I'd say, look, guys, I don't think you realize what's happening here. I'm selling a lot of tickets. We're going to sell out the campground. Oh, we'll never sell out the campground. The campground won't be sold out. And we sold out the campground. And then at some point, I had to kind of make a decision about what the maximum number was. We didn't know what the number should be.
Mm-hmm.
We never thought that we'd hit a maximum. The maximum has to do with sewage and water.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really what controls it. And we had no idea what would break and what wouldn't break. And
well, we've seen things break on that campground at way less than 2,000. I mean, there were pipes breaking, and years ago, there was a couple campsites where sewage was coming up. Now, the campground did a good job of handling that as soon as possible, but yeah, there's only so much the infrastructure on this campground can hold. Which, by the way, is the largest campground in the state of New Hampshire. It does not get bigger than Rogers Campground. This is it. Unless somebody else goes out and builds a brand new campground or buys Rogers and then, tears some more trees down or something to make some more room. This is as big as it can get. And you said that it's sold out as far as the campground. The campground is this year. Bonnie confirmed
that happened right
this.
away. I mean, that happened really quickly. Like basically when Porcfest 2022 ended, people were like, there was rumors that it was already sold out. But I was like number 17 on the waiting list a couple weeks ago when I
to get a campsite, you mean? To get an RV site or something
in
like
either site, whatever comes open.
And for anyone curious how this can happen, is because there's a lot of smaller hotels and Airbnbs and stuff like that around Rogers Campground where one can come during the day and then sleep elsewhere. So even if the campsites and the motel room and all of that are like sold out, there's still a nearby hotel that people can stay at.
Maybe.
Usually.
Have you heard anything about the hotel status? I mean, are people?
As a matter of fact, some hotel rooms just opened up.
Okay.
I just saw. There are 5 rooms at one of the places. I was going, really? There's 5 rooms there? But they just opened up.
They're going to go fast.
People drop out for various reasons and stuff like that. So I highly recommend get on wait list. Things move.
Mm-hmm.
Things are still going to be moving. Right now, people are going to be making some decisions. They're going to say, hey, should I pack up and go to the most awesome libertarian convention in the world, festival in the world? Is that something that I really want to do, this week-long immersion to Liberty Village? Or do I want to stay home and watch the Golden Girls rerun? And you'll be surprised to find out how many libertarians decide that Golden Girls reruns are more important than going and actually experiencing this thing that when we become libertarians, I never finished the story as to how I became libertarian.
Okay, thank you.
When we become libertarians, it's such a beautiful thing. It's such a transformation. And I remember, what happened was we argued and over time, my wife threatened to divorce me and all that type of stuff because she had married a socialist and she came from kind of a leftist family. And so I was like kind of a triumph. And then she was going, if you keep going down this path, I don't think we could stay together. And I was going, but is what I'm saying illogical? I was like going total libertarian on her. I go, does this not make sense? And she didn't really care because she was scared of being ostracized. So, there's a number of characteristics that I use for whether someone can actually convert to libertarianism. And definitely ability to withstand social ostracization is one of them. That you will still do what you think is right despite what the crowd says. It's logical consistency, social being, I think it's called disagreeableness, but being willing to be disagreeable, being willing to go against the crowd. Anyway, so we finally got to a point, my conservative friend and I, where we weren't disagreeing. And, it was just shocking. We were going, well, it's not fun working anymore because we can't argue about anything. We actually have agreement. But we thought we had invented something new.
Oh, really?
And it was about 6 months later that I actually saw on the Chicago bus, the snow was there. It was sloshing back and forth. I was staring down just kind of vacantly. I was reading up this leaflet upside down and it said something. And I was like looking at it. I was going, oh my God. I pick it up. It's dripping wet. And I jump out of the bus. I find a payphone. I was going around the loop. So out in Chicago.
In Chicago. Okay, got it.
And I call up my friend. I say, I know what we are. There's a name for what we are. We're libertarians. And that was the first time I'd heard it. A few months later, I made it to a libertarian convention, which was, it was so disappointing for me because they were all kind of from the conservative side. It's already lonely enough. But you see this beauty, right? You see this beauty, and and for me, I was going, oh my God, everything that I really hoped for in terms of the poor, in terms of minorities, we can actually achieve this. We can actually get this, and you get so excited, and so you try to do this conversion. And you do it over and over, and it's just so hard. And so this is a long story just to say my heart goes out to all those people who don't realize that they are stuck in the authoritarian 49, that they're not going to convince. They're not going to convince their Thanksgiving table, let alone their entire state. I mean, what I do on Twitter is, people say, "Oh, well, we'll convert this state," and so I say, I just work it out mathematically. What does that mean? In 125 years, you're going to be where New Hampshire is now. I work it out mathematically for them. So
no, they're not.
That's just
you're giving them too much credit.
That assumes that we have enough libertarians to actually get to that point.
Yeah, the other thing, you can't give them too much credit in the other 49 states, because the thing is, I've always called it the brain drain here, the libertarian brain drain, because we attract the best and the brightest of the liberty movement from across, not just the United States, but in many cases, people come from all over the world to be here in New Hampshire as part of, the Free State Project and the migration. So everybody that's come here has come from somewhere else. So those somewhere else's don't have these thousands
going down at the same time
of people. And so they're not replacing these great activists with people who are just as good. If they're replacing them at all, they're replacing them with newbies who have no experience.
That's the most annoying part, because most of these people that say, oh, why don't we do it in my state, in Louisiana or whatever, I don't even think they realize that there's not enough libertarian. Like, the thing is that most of the time I don't see them talking about converting their whole state. I did see one specifically saying, oh, we can all move to Mississippi, and they're already halfway there, and we can convert all of Mississippi, which is absolutely ridiculous. It was coming from someone from Texas who probably just had never been to Mississippi or something.
I'm from Mississippi. It's nowhere near libertarian.
Right. This was absolute ignorance. But most of the time, I think that they just think, oh, people should just start moving to my state. It's like, what? You think you're going to poach our people that we've been moving to New Hampshire?
Not going to happen.
I think it's absolutely true that you can't just start trying to convert people who don't have any interest in it. I think that if you start putting out seeds, people start asking you questions, you can work on those people. But just to think you can just change everyone around you just because you are right, even if you're completely right.
I wish that were true.
Just doesn't happen.
There was a time when I thought that, a lot of people were secretly libertarian. They just didn't know what it was. And then COVID showed me the truth, and that is that
I think that doesn't make sense, because that's like saying that libertarianism is a gene or something. But I do think that lots of people have the ability to reason within themselves, and it's just never been taught to them because public schools don't actually teach the trivium. They don't teach reasoning and logic. But I don't think that makes sense to say somebody's libertarian and don't know it. That doesn't make sense to me anymore. I used to kind of think that made sense, but it doesn't make sense because it's like saying libertarianism is like a gene, and it's just not.
It just means they wouldn't want to control other people, and they just don't give any thought to what their political identity is.
But maybe right now they do want to control other people, but they just haven't thought it through logically.
I think that's what the case that Ian was making.
No, I'm saying, like, you could be somebody that absolutely is completely dead wrong in every way. I used to think Mexicans were coming over to take our land, and Islam should be banned from America. I was dead wrong. I wasn't like, well, I don't want to control people, but I just don't know what libertarianism is. I was dead wrong, very bad, right-winger. Police are good. We need laws, things like that. I just got it explained to me, and the main thing was I wanted to know what my beliefs were coming from me, not from being led by emotion. So I literally looked up elementary school books about logic.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely possible to bring some people on board. Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just saying, and Bonnie and I have had this argument on Twitter, which is just a terrible platform to have a deep discussion.
Right.
Nonetheless, we've tried to do that, and I am definitely of the, after my decades, and and Bonnie maybe after 40 years or so, she will have the way of converting people. I think that it's Bonnie was of the type. She had characteristics, whether they're innate, I suspect they are, or whether they were learned early. But I think that there's also a genetic component that actually allowed her to go and say, I need to understand this. It was just like my friend and I. When we converted, it took 9 months for us to convert. My friend and I, we both came to this synthesis that was impossible before, but it took 9 hard months, and we stuck with it. We were determined. We were pounding it really, and willing to kind of go, okay, there's something wrong here with my thinking. What is that? Most people are just not, they're totally comfortable with A and not A. If you're comfortable with A and not A, it's darn hard to become libertarian.
What is that?
It's the logical
A and not A.
Oh.
It's the first thing.
Go ahead. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So A and not A is you have one belief and then you have the opposite belief, and you're holding those two beliefs as true at the same time. So you could call it hypocrisy. You could call it just logically inconsistent.
You mean like the belief that a lot of people have that you can't trust politicians, but we need the government.
Right.
My favorite was Mitt Romney in 2000 when he was running for presidential. He said that in 2000 he was the CEO of Bain Capital, but he wasn't the CEO of Bain Capital. And he said this in a debate. And conservatives said, yeah, that checks out. That makes sense. Like, no, it doesn't. He literally said he was the CEO and wasn't the CEO in the same sentence.
Well, isn't Biden's wife a doctor but not a doctor?
I don't know.
She's a PhD in education or something silly like that.
We love independence, but we don't like secession.
Yep.
I mean, it's really good to I'm actually going to work on an instrument to identify who is worthy of your time and effort to convert, which is, for me, it's not really conversion, it's more revealing the libertarian. But one of them is the person who gets really upset when you do a logical inconsistency, and their voice, wait, you can't say it. That person has a chance. Now there's other things that's required, but that's a really, really good clue that's somebody who might be able to make the journey. Bonnie, and it's so funny because we know how weird we are. We know how unusual we are, and yet we keep projecting that other people are like us and that they can follow the same path that we took. I just think that is so wrong, and I converted a lot of people on Quora, but it took a long time, and they were extremely intellectual, extremely open, extremely curious. Tell me more about this. So are you saying this versus this? So they were really good into discourse. They were really curious. They wanted to know. A lot of them couldn't make it. For a variety of other reasons besides logical consistency. For example, that social ostracization, that they were so scared that they were going to be ostracized. I can't talk about this anymore. They truncate the conversation. But I just think it's just so costly, and that's really where I am now.
Conversion is costly.
Conversion.
I just don't think it has to be
supplication.
I don't think it has to be. If you're just putting out there what you believe, you're not like what we do on Free Talk Live every single night is basically just say, this is what I believe. A lot of the times people that like to have something negative to say about Free Talk Live, it's you guys just agree with each other all night. But that's the thing. We're basically on here explaining what we believe. People get to listen to it. People will start listening and say, the first 15 minutes, I was so pissed off. Then I just couldn't help but get more, and I just kept listening. It's not that we're agonizing. It's not like some kind of hard labor. Like, please understand this. You have to look at this and look at this. We're just saying what we believe, being ourselves, and I think that's the best way. That's how I treat my Twitter. I just say things that are true all day.
That's essentially.
And I've gotten people just straight up ask me, like, Bonnie, what? I see this stuff you say. Like, are you? I don't want to sound dumb, but are you a Republican? What's going on? And they just want to know more.
And that's cool. And
it sucks that they think I'm a Republican, but
yeah. Well, some people think we're communists, depending on who right. Depending on who's listening and what their preconceived notions are. And what we do is we do a broadcast, right? So we hit, I don't know, however many hundreds of thousands of people might be listening to the radio right now that happen to be broadcasting this particular episode. And some people who are hearing this maybe are in a place where they can be open-minded enough to ask questions and to listen longer and to come on board.
There's also a lot in there. I mean, it's not just talking into a microphone. That's all it is, like when the show was actually on. But to get to a point where Free Talk Live was being heard by hundreds of thousands of people, Ian put in a lot of effort.
I didn't mean it's not work. I just meant that it's not like we're going to one person and being like, okay, what do you believe? Here's why that's wrong. I think that would be agonizing, difficult, impossible, basically. Sure. But the other thing I have to ask you, Dennis, is would you believe that there was some kind of mechanistic or gene component in this if we didn't live in a society where 99% of the people you talk to, maybe not 99, but most people you talk to went to public schools because they are literally trained to not have unity consciousness, to be in constant opposition with their own thoughts and think nothing of it because they're just trained to memorize things. Those things are all true. Those things may conflict each other. They don't think about that because they didn't learn logic. Well, do you think we would be looking at the same situation if almost everyone you talk to didn't go to public school?
That's a good question.
I think public school, I don't know if we'll get to it, but abusing children. I think public schools is one of the greatest abuse of children. It is a mental retardation of their brains, a destruction of their brains, and an inability for them to think, and kind of intentionally so. I think that the history shows that, I think it's very sad. I actually started a company, a group, one of my multiple efforts to backdoor into libertarianism. When I realized that conversion didn't work, supplication didn't work, electoral didn't work, being depressed about it didn't work. What I did was I worked on some backdoor ways of doing it, but one of them was called Parents Decide. And our motto was my money, my child, my decision. And that was the idea was to rescue people's children from the government schools and give them a different outlet. And I saw that as being key, as you're stating, Bonnie, that if we could get them out of the government's clutches, just the indoctrination and brainwashing, but also, perhaps teaching them a little bit better to actually think critically. That's a hard thing to do. Thinking critically is hard to do. Most people don't want to do it. So, so I saw that as a backdoor way. Maybe someday I'll tell you about my experiences there. That was a very interesting time.
At what point did you realize, or did you hear about the Free State Project, and how fast did you make the move out here after you heard about it?
2011, I came up here for a birthday. Carol was out of town, and she said, "Well, what would you like to do?" I had an old socialist friend who had sent me back in 2003, 2004 about the Free State Project. And I discounted it because he was still a socialist, and what the hell does he know? And but I had heard about it, and I finally came up here, and I was only coming up for the day of my birthday. My birthday always falls in Porcfest during Porcfest.
Okay, that's nice.
And so I came up just for that day, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life because I had never been around people who started with a premise of self-ownership, of respecting your sovereignty, of respecting you as a human being, and not utilizing you as a psychopathic tool. I was going, oh my God, this is incredible. And I could have conversations. I never had those types of conversations, in amongst my groups, even though I was in extremely intellectual groups. And so I called up Carol that night. I said, honey, I know I was going to come back home tonight, but I'm enjoying myself. I'm just going to stay, and I'm going to stay one more day. And then the next night I called up. I said, honey, So 2011, I spent the whole week there.
That's great.
And
Wow.
I came back, 12, 13, I think 13, 14, 13, 14, 15, I brought my daughter. And then I took a long hiatus. I think 15 was a break year for a number of reasons, which we might go into, but it was a break year for me. And then basically it was the end of 2018. that I came up for to move. So that was my wife by that time. My wife spent many decades kicking me under the table because I would bring up topics and try to still see if I could convert people. And she was always very fearful that that people would be rejecting us for that. But when I started writing on Quora, and she started being able to read the long form, right? So this is an argument to Aria's Twitter. I think of Twitter as a signaling for my gang.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of you're putting out a signal, and that's it. It's to the already believers,
right? Yeah.
And or against the people who don't believe, and so it's a good us versus them thing. It is not a good conversion thing. But she actually, after reading about 3 months of my stuff, I wrote 2,000 long form essays on Quora,
mm-hmm.
Almost 2,000, and she was like going, okay, all right, I think I understand this. And she's actually the one who suggested we move to the Free State for retirement.
All right, there you go.
And I was like, really? Is that serious? I was so excited.
That is exciting.
We came up, we were looking for property. We had high criteria. My wife created she creates things, and she created this property really fast. We found it really fast. We bought it. We were going to transition over kind of 3-4 years. But just as soon as we had this, I said, I'm not going back to Massachusetts. So we had 2 houses.
Oh, you were in Massachusetts?
One down in Massachusetts.
Oh,
yep.
God.
Yeah, I was in Massachusetts for 4 years. I went there for graduate school.
New York, Chicago, Massachusetts. Yikes. Talk about out of the frying
pan. I was
pan.
in the most authoritarian. I mean, Chicago was actually the most interesting because it was so corrupt, and they didn't give a darn about it. They were just like, yeah, we're corrupt, and either you're with us.
Wow.
You're either with us or you're against us. If you're with us, we might give you a little taste, and if you're against us, we're going to steal you. We're going to rob you blind. And it was actually Mayor Daley's Chicago was very upfront about it. You go to Boston, they're doing the same darn thing. They're just pretending a lot more. Chicago, they were just out in the open.
We're going to talk about the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We got some background here on how Dennis Pratt, the current organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, found the movement, found the migration of people who love liberty moving here to New Hampshire, as 3 of us on this show have done, as thousands of others out there have done. Thousands more still to come here, I suspect. Many, many more. And, of course, come on up to the Free State Project's Porcupine Freedom Festival, as Dennis did, and you will likely have that similar experience of, oh my gosh, this thing's real. I gotta get here. There's more coming up. Hour number 2 is on the way. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. Ukraine claims to have launched offensive actions in the east of the country, raising speculation that a long-anticipated counter-offensive is underway. Russia, meanwhile, says it successfully prevented a large-scale attack, killing hundreds of Ukrainian troops. But Kyiv says such information should be viewed critically, accusing Moscow of spreading fake information to demoralise Ukrainians and mislead the Russian population. Stuart Smith has more on what's being claimed in Moscow, where wartime censorship means only official information can be reported.
The Russian Defense Ministry implied on Monday that Ukraine's counter-offensive had begun, with action on 5 fronts, but that Ukrainian forces achieved, quote, no success. Further, it said up to 700 Ukrainian soldiers were killed. It also claimed pro-Ukrainian forces had again attempted to penetrate Russia's Belgorod region, and again claimed no violation of the state border was achieved.
Officials in India say a train crash that killed at least 275 people was likely caused by a signalling error. The Indian government has said a detailed report will be released soon. Ishan Garg is in Bhubaneswar, outside a hospital where the bodies are being brought in.
What we understand so far is that a system that is responsible for making the trains switch tracks, there was some issue with that system. It's still unclear if it was because of human interference or if it was because of technical glitches. But the railway minister has said that those details will come out as the investigation progresses. Now, what we are also hearing from the railway board and the railway ministry is that they have asked India's topmost investigative agency, the Central Bureau of Investigation, to investigate this case, which means that they're also possibly looking at a criminal angle.
Former US President Mike Pence has filed paperwork to launch his run for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. The documents were submitted to the Federal Election Commission. He's expected to personally launch his bid on Wednesday. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Mike Pence, who served as Donald Trump's vice president, may face an uphill battle to win the support of a party who is still largely loyal to his former boss. Their once close alliance imploded after Pence refused to help Trump's efforts to overturn his loss to President Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Mike Pence's poll numbers have mostly hovered around the low to mid-single digits, whereas Donald Trump continues to lead the pack. The former vice president is expected to bring a more traditional conservative voice to contrast the populist preachings of Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
And Apple has unveiled an augmented reality headset. It's the company's first big hardware launch in nearly 10 years. CEO Tim Cook says the product seemingly blends the real world and the virtual world. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the deadly Friday night rail crash in India. The packed Coromandel Express passenger train collided with a stationary goods train after what officials say may have been some kind of signalling fault. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the scene of the accident on Saturday and warned that there will be stringent punishment of anyone found responsible for the disaster. Sky News Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch at the scene of the tragedy says it has raised fresh questions about the safety of India's ageing system.
There's concerns about a lack of collision devices being used, ageing tracks, not enough people to work across the system. It's a 170-year-old network, and there are 14 million people every day using the network. And despite those issues, it comes at a time when the government under Narendra Modi is actually trying to expand the number of trains because of the demand. So it's a challenging moment for the country. It's forcing a lot of questions.
And the investigation now getting underway is likely to take on a political dynamic, with opposition politicians already insisting, even before the inquiry begins, that the government bears responsibility for failing to deploy safety features more broadly across the country's rail network. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denslow reporting.
It's the Onion Radio News. A crazy man announces plans to stand in a doorway and yell at cars. This is Doyle Redland reporting. Dennis Fife, an Alhambra, California crazy man, held a press conference today to announce his intention to stand in the doorway of the office building at 2600 Kenilworth Avenue and yell at cars all day.
At approximately 9:30 a.m. on the day in question, shortly after I finish lunging at dogs, I will proceed to the front steps of the Simmons building and yell loudly for 9 hours. The screaming will be broken by a 15-minute fit of rigid catatonia, most likely in the late afternoon.
Among the topics Fife plans to address during his 9-hour rant, the ace of diamonds, bookshelves, the man trying to kill him, plastic bags in trees, Trapper John M.D., and papers everywhere. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. If you've got a question about the Porcupine Freedom Festival, we have Dennis Pratt with us. He is the current organizer of the event, calling us from his home in Dover. And we do have the phones here at 603-283-6160. We kind of talked about some of the background behind Dennis and where he comes from, which is the big city, New York City, and some of the other cities like Chicago, where he spent some time and was raised as a socialist, ended up changing his viewpoint after a lot of intellectual discussion with one of his people that he worked with. And we've got him back here on the line here. Dennis, are you with us?
I am. Can
Excellent.
you hear me?
We got you loud and clear. In fact, we also have a call on the line from Alu Axelman from LibertyBlock.com. Alu, a prolific libertarian author who I believe will be doing a debate at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Alu, tell us about the debate you're having. Do you know when and where that's going to be occurring?
Yes, sir, and hello to Dennis. I'm glad you made it onto the show. I am debating against Stephen Villiers, my good friend, who's also on the board of the FNHI.
The Foundation for New Hampshire Independence?
Yes, sir. We'll be debating on Thursday, the 22nd, at 12 noon at RV60, which is the Free State based.
Okay, cool. So this is one of the many, what is it? How many dozen hubs are there, Dennis, at this Porcupine Freedom Festival? The Free State based is just one of many, right?
Right. I mean, so Porcfest always had some groups doing things in the campground. So they always had that. What they didn't have was actually being able to put those into the official directory and have Porcfest provide the schedule of their events.
And this was in a lot of ways the fault of Hoover, which was very centralized, very expensive. It worked very well, but it was very...
This is an app.
Yes, it was very limited. And, I mean, this mechanism simply wasn't there for people out there in the campground to get their events on the Hoover app, which is what at the time ran the festival, right?
No. It was actually a different philosophy of how to run the Porcfest. Now, I actually started. I prototyped this on Hoover. So the hubs that you see now, I actually prototyped in 20 on Hoover. And now it didn't work all that well. It was hard. And so I had to write a lot of software to actually support it separately. So what you have now is actually supported by my software. But last year we had 70 something hubs. Right now, we had, I think we had 55 that were officially on the directory, and then there's always the hubs that just refuse to, I'm not going to report myself to the man, or they just can't get their stuff together.
Hold on, hold that thought there. We got to hit the old dump button on you because you can't say that one on the radio. But yes, what you were referring to was people who, some people just don't want to sign up for stuff. They don't want to join stuff, and that's fine. And those people are certainly welcome as well. But just to kind of explain what a hub is, what is a hub?
Yeah, so the hub was, I basically said, look, whatever it is that you want to do. My first year, I think I explained, I went around and asked people what they were doing in the Free State. Everyone was so passionate, and they were so excited to share. And then, they were excited to put on a program. And so that's basically what I did. I said, okay, whatever your passion area is, and I don't really care what it is. If you have something that you're passionate about, bring it to Porcfest. Share it with the people at Porcfest. Now, a lot of the things are liberty oriented. They might be products, they might be services, or they might be food oriented. They might be a lounge, where people just hang out and just enjoy each other, or they might be a venue where they actually put on a full range of programming. That could be everything from talks to how-tos to experiential things to debates like Lou was talking about. But last year we had about 70 or so, 70, 75. This year we'll have about 125.
That's amazing. So Alu, you're going to have a debate about what?
So Stephen Villiers and I both support New Hampshire independence. We're both on the board. And he has a somewhat different approach. He has a very more conservative and less conflict, less. He has
the approach of let's ask permission from master before we leave.
How asinine. Excuse me, husband who beats me every day. May I have permission to divorce you?
Right. So it'll be an interesting debate.
He wrote a book about it called the Club 75 Alliance Manifesto. I'm reading it now. I'm almost finished. It's very good. It's the same as his long, very well-produced video online explaining pretty much how he wants to get liberty people to the state of New Hampshire, especially those who love liberty and hate the federal income tax.
Yeah, he's a great activist. I don't want to sound like I'm downing Steve Villiers.
It's going to be a great debate.
He's a long time. I think he's a long-time treasurer for the Free State Project, and he holds some other roles as well. So definitely a doer, definitely a mover and a shaker, and he's just of the belief that let's get his project is to migrate people who are wealthy to New Hampshire, because obviously freedom benefits those people too. Get wealthy libertarians to move to New Hampshire, and then essentially petition the federal government to leave. So it sounds like you're boning up by reading his book. That way you're prepared. You know everything that's going to come out of his mouth at the debate. Very, very good. Good strategy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very good book. So I'm doing that, but I'm doing like 10 other events. I keep telling myself I'm going to chill out at Porcfest, but I keep...
He's also doing 9 of the 10 all at the same time. He will actually be in 9 different places all at once.
And he has a kid. He destroys the whole idea that you can't be an activist and have a kid. That's true. All of this super active. Has so much energy.
Yeah, thank you. In a sense, it's gotten a lot busier. Like I'm with my baby all the time, but in a sense, I haven't had to draw back that much on the activism. So I've still been able to go to the State House to actually testify on bills a few times this session, and I'm still writing almost as much as ever. So I'm still able to do a lot of stuff, but obviously the baby is a top priority, and he does take some time. But yeah, you could definitely still be an activist with plenty of kids.
I know you're going to have a booth. Go ahead, Dennis.
You just published a book, didn't you? You just released it 2 days ago or something.
Yes, sir. Yep. About 2-3 days ago, I was going to mention that as well. So I finally wrote about gun control in a book, and it's called The Pocket Guide to Killing Gun Control. And I think it's a unique, comprehensive kind of guide, mostly preaching to the choir, which is most of what I do, but it's for all libertarians, conservatives, anarchists, or even centrists or leftists who even support gun control, because it approaches destroying gun control in the debate from 3 totally different areas. So whether you want to argue constitutionally and based on what the Constitution says and case law and SCOTUS and history and founders, or you want to debate as far as human principles, natural negative rights, which is my favorite argument. It's a natural right to property and to self-defense, and a gun is a piece of property. So it's those 2 natural rights. And the third one is the practical argument of looking at statistics. It's pretty much 100% correlation. There's an association between looser laws and safer places and stricter laws and more dangerous places like Dennis mentioned, Chicago, New York City, New Jersey. I also lived in New York City and New Jersey. I can tell you from firsthand experience, they're very dangerous, and they're the two most strict gun control places in the union.
Did you have something, Alu, that you were looking forward to besides, events you're going to be involved in? Is there something at the Porcupine Freedom Festival that's happening that is particularly interesting to you, something that you don't want to miss?
I mean, there's tons of stuff. I have a lot of things written down I don't want to miss, but there's going to be a lot of great talks. I mean, Nikki and Renee are going to do some natural childbirth and know your rights type of stuff. I'll probably go to. Those are going to be very interesting to me. I'm hoping to play football at least once or twice. I'm hoping to grapple and box, and I'm putting on some clinics of grappling and boxing for people for free. But the big thing is, I would just say, seeing friends I haven't seen in a year. I mean, there are so many people that I know I see every year at Porcfest. I yell at them for not moving to New Hampshire so I can see them more, and it's all fun and just hanging out and relaxing. And I promise I'm going to meditate this year and go to Nikki's morning yoga at least once.
Nice.
I tell myself every year, but I never do. But as I'm sure you guys understand, I need to meditate. So I'm going to do that this year and chill out and take in the fresh air a little bit, because I do need to relax a bit.
Can you quiet the inner voice, Alu?
I've done it for a minute to 5 minutes here and there, but nice. I want to do it more.
All right, that's a good goal, Alu. Anything else you want to share with us tonight?
That's all. Just check out the book, please. The Pocket Guide to Killing Gun Control. It's on Amazon and everything, and find me and pick it up in person.
Alu Axelman is the author there. Thank you for the call tonight. Appreciate it. So, Dennis, we've been talking about the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I wanted to talk about something that I thought was a really good move that the Porcfest made, and I think you get credit for this. Correct me if I'm wrong, or give credit to whoever deserves it. But there was a big protest that happened, and I feel like it was 2018 or 2019, where the vendors just said, you know what, we've had it with these vendor fees, we've had it with all the rules. And they went over and they created their own vendor area that was outside of the sort of the classic zone. There's this thing called Agora Valley, which is a few different RV sites or rows of RV sites right as you sort of heading up towards the pavilion. That used to be the real hot spot for years. That was where everybody who wanted to be seen would locate, and it was a very, very popular place to be.
Still is now.
Well, it is now, but there was one year in, I think it was 2018 or 2019, where the vendors were just like tired of all the rules that previous organizers had come up with, and there were always reasons for the rules, but they were tired of it, and they were tired of the vendors' fees, and they said, you know what, we're just going to go over here. And they made this road that was kind of like a little ways down, and almost every vendor went over there. Where were you during this? Were you sort of like assisting with the Porcupine Freedom Festival at that time? And was it you who made the decision, you know what, let's get rid of these vendor fees, let's decentralize the campground, let's step away as this sort of organizing force of the Free State Project, which is, if I recall correctly, used to actually rent the entire campground or reserve it or something. And at some point, somebody in leadership said, this isn't working. We've upset the vendors. And there's a revolt. They didn't leave the event. They just went and they did their own thing. How did that come about? Were you involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of my redesign. So I did an extensive redesign of Porcfest. Now, you're talking about some decisions that Jessica made, I don't think you realize where Porcfest was. Porcfest is, a very important, at least nominally, an important part of the Free State Project. The idea is, we're trying to build this liberty homeland. How do we get people to come? Well, what if we give them an experience, a little taste of what that might look like? And that is what the Porcupine Freedom Festival is. I call it an immersion into a simulated freedom village for a week. The trouble was that for a variety of reasons, and I had to study it and think through it what the reasons were. Porcfest was always right on the edge of losing money. If it wasn't losing money, or you'd have to kind of have to look squinty whether it was losing money or not. It wasn't serving us in terms of getting movers here. It was costing the organization even more than the money. It was costing us enormous amounts of volunteer time. that was just that it's not free. Volunteer time is not free. It's taken away from other things. And so the idea was, do we keep it up? Do we keep going with this Porcupine Freedom Festival as something that's run by and for the FSP? Do we shut it down? Do we spin it off? And Jessica was looking at, okay, what if we spun it off and we don't actually have cash to kind of run it from behind? Could it actually break even? Is that something that's possible? And one of the ideas that she had was, okay, look, you have these vendors coming. Why aren't they kind of helping pay for this thing? And so that was that attempt. But when I took it over, I diagnosed the problem quite differently. I used a number of models, including Porcfest, including Jack Schmeck's, how do you pronounce his last name?
Alt Expo. Yeah, Schmeck Alt Expo, which was
Schmeck. Jack, the Alt Expo. A lot of that, it just said, okay, what if we actually design this quite differently? And I took it away from, you keep on talking about your model is the OG model of Porcfest being down in the bowl and that type of thing. I junked that model almost immediately. I said we shouldn't be a hierarchical Porcfest. It shouldn't be something that's done by the organizers, run from the field and the pavilion, and instead the Porcfest should be throughout the entire campground. Now, if I had the energy, and I don't, last year was supposed to be my last year, but where I would be going, where a younger man is Rogers Campground would turn into a total fairground. It would be a fairground Liberty Village, and you would actually camp across the street in the field or some other place. There would be campgrounds. You'd be staying off site. There would be some people still there, but it would be a much larger, we're talking, gigantic festival with 330 hubs. And that's really where I was heading. Last year, I just don't have, I'm an old man. I don't have that much energy. Last year was supposed to be my last year. The hubs what I do is very hard to do. It takes a special skill and it takes a lot of work. And they basically decided they were going to go ahead and kind of junk the whole thing and go back to the bowl idea. And I said, not for XX. I just couldn't do it. Because I spent so much time bringing this.
What do you mean by that? What's the bowl idea?
Well, it's your model of Porcfest happens down in the bowl. It happens in the field. It happens in the tents and the pavilion down in the field.
I think we're having a disagreement
as opposed
about
to what happens in the campground.
Because the way Porcfest is right now, it's the bowl area and what happens down there at the bottom of the hill, where the campground as a whole is not Porcfest.
Well, I mean, it's all Porcfest, but
Ari,
go ahead.
And Ari and I have had this discussion. That was intentionally not the model that I used. Porcfest is actually the campground. The campground of the Porcfest is the campground. What's going on there is the hubs. That is the center of the focus. And if anything, the field. Last year we actually had a number of the sponsors who were going, everything's going on up in the campground. I go, yes, and they go, well, that's really kind of bad. And if you had a map of the center of activity and where it's shifted over the last 5 years when I've been working on this, you would see it's moving right out into the campground. That I put in the Silk Road. Right, the Silk Road is that cuts across the campground to open up the campground, so that we could have lots and lots and lots of hubs all across that campground. And we'll get into this at some point, but the pavilion is no longer represents us. It doesn't represent anything except that if there's a hub that has a lot of attendees coming for it, that's overflow.
So I think that
if you actually have an event, if you have an event And that's how I make my decision. That's how I made my decision this year. Is that if you bring a speaker or someone that you can't feature at your hub, I want all the activity happening in the campground. I want all the activity happening in the hubs. I think that models what it is that we're doing. We are a decentralized bottom-up movement. And having this act as though this is a top-down hierarchical centralized convention, it's not. That's not what it is. This is
you say that, but then you call the pavilion your pavilion, and Porcfest your campground and stuff.
I can certainly get to that, Ari. I'm talking about the model, though. And what I'm saying is that the model is that the campground is where the activities are. The things that happen at the pavilion, yes, they come down. I own a hub called the pavilion, just like you own a hub called Free Talk Live.
Now, let me just clarify with you on that, Dennis, before you go on. So when you say you own the hub, the pavilion, this is a question I don't think I've gotten answered before. Did you rent the pavilion, you personally, or was that the Free State Project Porcupine Freedom Festival budget that did that?
So I make those decisions. So yeah, I do. I mean, so did you rent the Free Talk Live thing, or was it the Free Talk Live company that rented it?
There's no Free Talk Live company, and there's an agreement we have with the campground in that particular case. So yes, Free Talk Live, whether it be Aria or me or whoever it is that cut that deal with the campground. So in the same way, as I understand it, the pavilion area and most of the official kind of Rogers campground facilities that are there. It's not just the pavilion. There's a few other things they have. There's like $1,000 a day rental fee in order to rent that typically. Like if you're going to come in there, you want to have a wedding, for instance, as Jay Noon did several years ago during Porcfest. They had their wedding there. They had to pay to rent the pavilion because no one else was renting it. During Porcfest, it's, if someone wants to rent the pavilion, then they can rent the pavilion. If not, then it's closed. And so I guess the question is the money coming to rent the pavilion, presuming it's costing something, is that coming from you personally, or is that coming from the Free State Project?
It's coming from the revenues that we're generating for Porcfest.
Right. So is it really true to say that it's yours? I mean, it is your responsibility.
It is mine in that I'm running Porcfest.
Right. So it's your responsibility. You are running the event, but it wasn't actually your funds that went into it. It's the event's funds. It's the funds of the people who are buying tickets, the funds of anybody that might be a sponsor of the event that you're managing. Right? It wasn't you personally. You didn't cut a check from your own personal bank account.
Right. But
right.
Okay. It's right. So I mean, it's you have a company, and the company puts something out. The guy who's running that company makes the rules for that thing.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the confusion has come in. Maybe some of the frustration. I know that some people have decided they don't want to attend the event over some of the decisions that have been made. And I want to make sure I'm clear on this, Dennis. What I've been saying on the air is, while I may not agree with every decision that somebody makes as far as running this particular festival, and no one ever will, like I said, it's a hard job to have, I've never said anyone should boycott the event.
Just don't go to the particular events that you don't support. That's easy.
I think people should still go to the event, still, buy a ticket, go enjoy the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm actually between you and Dennis on this one, Aria. I think that the entire place is the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but only so much of it is actually run by the Free State Project as far as, they're renting the pavilion, they're renting the tents in the bowl area, things like that. We can talk a little bit further about it. Dennis, you're with us until we're done, which we don't know when that's going to be. The number here, if you want to join the show, is 603-283-6160. If you've got a question for Dennis Pratt, he's the organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And we got more coming up here. You can join the show, and you can join us online, of course, over at freetalklive.com.
If you're looking for work, or even if you're not, here's an innocent mistake you really want to avoid. Never return calls before listening to your voicemail. Your wireless phone sends calls you didn't answer into voicemail, and it shows you phone numbers for calls you missed. Important. Don't call back callers you missed until you have first listened to your messages. Otherwise, you frustrate people who bothered to leave messages by asking them to repeat a message they just left as your voicemail greeting instructed them to. If you're a job applicant, this alone could be a deal killer. And even if you're not, there are few things you can convey to someone that are as fundamentally maddening as, "I didn't hear you." With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips for job seekers and everyone else, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. regulators have filed 13 charges against the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange and Binance's CEO Changpeng Zhao. The exchange is accused of mismanaging customer funds and dodging U.S. laws. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
In a nearly 140-page complaint, the Securities and Exchange Commission accuses Binance of mixing billions of dollars in customer funds and transferring it to a third party. The SEC also accuses Binance of trading fraudulently to boost the price of assets. In a court complaint, the SEC says Binance acted with blatant disregard of federal securities laws and investor and market protections they help provide. In a statement, Binance said all user assets are safe and secure and will defend any allegations to the contrary. William Denzelo, New York.
California officials say they have evidence that Florida arranged for 16 migrants from Colombia and Venezuela to be flown from the state of New Mexico to California's capital, Sacramento, where they were eventually dropped off outside a church. Last year, Florida and other Republican-controlled states sent migrants multiple times to Democrat-run cities to protest President Biden's border policies. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta called the alleged political stunt shameful and says his office is looking into whether any crimes like kidnapping may have been committed.
It's potentially illegal. It could violate criminal laws. It could violate civil laws. So we're continuing our investigation. We'll get to the bottom of that. We want accountability.
Florida hasn't commented on the allegations. Last year, the state, which is led by Republican presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis, arranged similar flights to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. A judge in Texas has banned lawyers from using artificial intelligence to write their legal briefs after one generated filing was found to be riddled with errors. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Judge Brantley Starr of the Northern District of Texas is now requiring that lawyers submit sworn statements indicating whether part of any legal briefing was generated with AI, and if it was, to confirm a human checked it for errors. This after a lawyer used ChatGPT to prepare a legal brief that was later found to have numerous mistakes, including made-up court cases. But Judge Starr didn't rule out AI's role in the profession, saying the technology could be used in discovery requests, form divorces, and anticipated questions at oral arguments.
And U.S. stocks lost ground Monday after recent gains nearly saw a departure from bear market territory. Investors have been upbeat since lawmakers reached a deal to raise the debt ceiling. The Dow was down 0.6%, the S&P off 0.2%, and the Nasdaq closed the day down 0.1%. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is...
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here if you got a question for the organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, the big event, the world's, I would say, largest libertarian festival that is going on this summer. I don't even think we've given the dates yet. It's coming up. We've just been so busy talking. It's coming up very soon, actually. It starts, I believe, on the 19th, which is a Monday, and it goes through the 25th, which is a Sunday. So it is a full week of hanging out in the woods in the beautiful Rogers Campground with more liberty-minded people than, honestly, you could possibly talk to in 7 days. And it is really a lot of fun. As Alu Axelman was pointing out, a lot of the time you're going to spend at the Porcupine Freedom Festival is just going to be hanging out with people and talking. There's all kinds of events going on, and Dennis Pratt, the organizer, is with us here. He's pointed out there's going to be over 100 or 125 what they call hubs, which are different locations all around the campsite where different people can organize various different types of topics and goings-on and presentations and debates
and it's actual
parties.
Libertarians, and it's rare, and it's unlike anything you've ever experienced. It's not conservatives. A lot of people these days are confusing conservatives and libertarians to the extent that someone commented on one of my Twitter earlier saying, well, at least half the people at Porcfest are transphobic in their hearts. I was like, no. You're confusing conservatives and libertarians again. These people are actual libertarians. Maybe some of them are actually conservative, maybe 1 in 20 or 1 in 40 or whatever, but by and
there's
large,
always been a few of them.
The majority of these are like actual libertarians.
You can always tell who the conservatives are because they get their panties in a wad when somebody walks around, wearing underwear or something like that, or in a grass skirt.
I was thinking of going in a bikini.
So, Dennis, you're here with us. We're talking about some of the frustrations of being an organizer of an event like this. It's one of the things when you organize anything that's intending to invite hundreds, if not thousands of people, is somebody's going to get upset. Somebody's going to be mad about something. They're not going to be happy with the curriculum or the guests or the other people at the event, or there's always somebody who's having a conflict, and you can never make everyone happy. But I want to come back to something that you had said earlier when we were talking about sort of the vision for the event. A lot of the things I really agreed with. It really, really struck home with me, the idea of having the speakers who are focused on New Hampshire, porcupine focused, I think was the terminology that you used. Getting away from the Beltway libertarian types, the Reason magazine types, those kinds of people. That really resonated with me as well. And when I organized an event here in Keene, I focused, my one rule basically was that anybody on the stage had to be a New Hampshire-based liberty activist. I only bent that rule one time, and that was for Gavin Andreessen, who is basically the second in command of Bitcoin.
That doesn't count as bending the rule.
Well, I acknowledged I was bending the rules in that case, and that was my purview as the organizer of the event. Sure. And the organizer of the event gets to do those sorts of things. But inevitably, controversy is going to come up, and I don't want to get too deep into all of the different controversies because they all sort of come from the same issue, which is to say that somebody disagrees with what the organizer decided to do with the main stage. And it's not my event, which is why I say, look, even if we disagree, Dennis, I still am glad that you're there doing what you're doing. I don't blame you for wanting to give it up because it is incredibly stressful having to deal with all this. But also, I've always encouraged people to continue to come to this event. And that includes the time the Porcupine Freedom Festival banned me from the event for a year, without saying it was a year, by the way. We found that out later on. But the first thing I did when I found that out was I wrote an article at freekeen.com saying, hey, I may not be going, but you should still go. I still thought that was such an important event. It isn't about me. It isn't about Dennis. It's about the 1,000, 2,000, maybe even 3,000 people that are going to be there that you can get connected with. So go to porcfest.com, grab your tickets while they are still available, because the tickets are still available. If you want to camp at the campground, Dennis, would you recommend that people get connected with the existing ticket holders, with the people that have campsites? As I understand it, some of them are willing to share campsites and things like that. That sort of thing is going on, right?
Yeah, for sure. The Facebook Porcfest plans is probably the most active. I actually moved a lot of people over to Telegram because you guys were over on Telegram. So, of course, as soon as I moved a couple thousand people over to Telegram, you guys moved over to Matrix.
Sorry,
and then you start going, oh, you have to move over to Matrix? I go, do you just realize how hard
That's
it was
Chris Wade.
to move thousands of people over?
Finally,
and
it's Chris Wade.
I know. As soon as we move over to Matrix, you're going to be on some other platform.
To be fair, though, Dennis, this wasn't our fault. I would love to be on Telegram, but I'm forbidden by the government from using it.
Oh yeah, that is a
Ian's
big part.
forbidden from using it.
It's true.
This was a whole big thing when I got out of prison, when I got out of jail. Like all of the Free Talk Live hosts communicated via Telegram, and then suddenly I wasn't able to use Telegram, and it was making me pull my hair out trying to get these people to use some other avenue besides Telegram so that we could get in touch with them. I was like, hey, are you going to do the show tonight? It was an absolute nightmare. I do not envy you in the least for trying to move people to one platform or the other. I know how nightmarish that is.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it, though. But we would love to be on Telegram.
I did get such a kick out of it, though, because I go, okay, so I'm going to standardize around the Porcfest platform, and of course, you guys were pushing it so hard, and I said, okay, and I can use this, and oh my goodness, you should have heard the caterwauling of,
People don't
moving
like change.
some of this stuff over to Telegram, and oh my Lord, but I did it.
Just to Telegram? Telegram's so easy.
As soon as I got there. As soon as we were up and running, I was, I had the schedule up there, and in those days, when we first started moving over there, it was still like, we were talking about maybe 250, 300 events, and it was still kind of hard to get it up there, up on Telegram. Now we have 1,000. It would be a real pain to put it up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a
and then
chat
you guys
room.
move, and you're like going, oh, only losers are on Telegram.
I
have never said that.
I love Telegram.
You better hit that spill button.
I think you're referring to Chris Wade.
It's mainly Chris Wade. If I just had to choose one based on, if the government wasn't not allowing my friends to use some of them, forgetting privacy, Telegram's the best one.
Telegram's a very pretty
features.
app. Unfortunately, it is still centrally controlled. So I do understand the criticisms of it.
It is, but they've missed, like the FBI released a memo like a year and a half ago showing how far they could get into some of these things. And Telegram and Signal are right there at the top of things that were safe and secure from prying by the government. It's like,
for the most part, yeah.
I mean, just use
to be the best.
Just use a destructible chat every time you talk to people. It's not that hard.
So I don't want to go too far off into the tech weeds here. So some of the controversies so far this year, Dennis, have included disagreements, of course, over who's on the main stage. One of the ones that's bubbled up now into apparently mainstream media with WMUR covering is RFK Jr., who is going to be giving a speech at the pavilion.
He's not as hot as JFK.
As hot. Got it. Okay. Well, he's alive, and so he's speaking. And there's other politicians too.
But he's a living politician, which makes him less hot.
Right. So does this? I mean. You said earlier, Dennis, that the way you view the main stage is if somebody can't, if they don't have enough room on the sites in the campground, then you'll book them into the main stage. Does that kind of frustrate you, considering you wanted to get away from Beltway type people? I mean, you've got essentially people like this RFK Jr., this Vivek guy from the right wing who's like a total drug warrior, psychopath. You've got some other characters like Tulsi, who will change her, political clothing as often as she thinks it'll benefit her. I mean,
who was this one?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Really?
Yeah, she was a
Democrat
from
Democrat to Republican last year.
Republican or whatever. I mean, does that frustrate you at all?
I thought she was initially a Republican.
To be to be booking these people. I mean, because that seems like it's contrary to what you were saying earlier, where it should be focused on porcupines.
Right. So this goes back to whether we're decentralized or centralized. And my rule is you bring me somebody that a lot of the attendees want. So it's, kind of a bottom-up demand. And they want that. You can show me demand, and then we can actually have kind of a libertarian talk. So, for example, Tulsi, I mean, I worked with them on this talk. I love their talk. So Tulsi's talk, it's basically coming from the left and what her path was, her journey out of being the Democratic presidential candidate, and then realizing that it just wasn't fitting, and then going through that issue of, well, am I going to lose all my friends? Am I going to lose all my supporters? Because this isn't fitting, and I have to actually leave. And what do? She's now politically homeless. She's definitely not a libertarian, but she's politically homeless.
She is anti-war, though.
Nah, she's only anti.
Well, I don't. You're making judgments here. What I judge is, so let's say that Ian comes and says, "Hey, I've got Joe Blow here." Yeah, and I don't really know who Joe Blow is, but I really want him to talk. And boy, there's a lot of people who want him to talk. First thing I'm going to do is find out what the demand is. Kind of is this somebody that really can? Okay, so I took Porcfest, moved it out of the bowl, spread out to the campground. Now there's so much activity that's happening in the campground. It's really hard to attract people out of the campground back down into the bowl. And so people will come to me and go, "I want to be in the bowl." I go, "Well, you can't attract people. You can't attract enough people down here.
Mm-hmm.
You have to show me that you can really attract that type of demand down into the bowl." Now, because if you have somebody who, they can attract 30, 40, 50 people, have them at your hub. That's a fantastic venue. It feels successful. You put 30, 40, 50 people in the pavilion, it feels like a loser situation. But anyway,
I don't know about this.
So
I want to address something. You said I was offering up a judgment. No, I'm sorry. My understanding of Tulsi Gabbard was that she's anti-war, and I was basing that off of what Mark Edge has said about her. However, in regard to the pavilion, and what was my train of thought going to be?
Attracting enough people?
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. And I don't remember how I was going to even get back to it now because I got sidetracked thinking about Tulsi Gabbard and whether or not she was anti-war.
If you can come back to it, that's fine. But what I want to know is, why would there be any significant demand at a libertarian event where you yourself...
I hadn't even heard it. I mean, I'm kind of shocked by hearing this. This is the first time I've heard, lots of attendees want to hear RFK Vivek Ramaswamy.
Right.
I honestly haven't heard that from people. In fact, I've heard a lot more pushback,
where
so
you
it's just
yourself,
shocking.
Dennis, have, and I agreed with you on this, that this should not be focused on the Beltway types, and, we should be focusing on the porcupine people. Why would there be any kind of demand to listen to a psychopath like Vivek Ramaswamy, who literally wants to start a hot war with drug cartels in Mexico? Why would anyone want to give this guy the time of day at a libertarian event, let alone put him on the front and center stage? Why is there a demand for this guy?
Why is there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What is he?
I'm a marketing guy.
How do you know
I'm
there
a marketing
is?
guy. And so, because I ask people. So, for example, like this RFK thing, right? The people who are loudest on the RFK thing, they say, "There's no demand. The market is spoken." It's one segment, one small segment. We have many, many segments within the Free State Project. Many segments.
How are you measuring these people, though?
I go and I talk to people in various groups, and I say, who's interested in this? The number of people who want to go see RFK is almost practically sold out. I mean, it's incredible the number of people who want to see it. Now, are they intimidated by the people who are screeching? Yes. As a matter of fact, I get calls all the time of people saying, "Hey, I'm nervous. How can I get in here? Because I don't know what these people are doing." I mean, I think this has been one of the worst shows for the people who really value the right to defend oneself. I think they could have come off and looked really good. And I think that this is very ugly, very ugly.
What you're referring to there.
And so I talked to
Dennis,
multiple segments, multiple people.
We need to explain what you're referring to because our audience may not be aware. The RFK, besides the fact that, my big objection is this guy isn't a libertarian, shouldn't be on the main stage. But the most people's objection is that there's an extra requirement.
Everyone has to get searched and make sure they don't have a gun. It's going to be a gun-free zone to go see RFK.
Yeah, there's going to be
Jr.
security, some form of security. RFK's got private security or whatever, off-duty cops, I don't know who they are. But they're going to be there and ostensibly screening and stopping people from carrying guns into specifically the RFK speech. The rest of the campground will be Porcfest as normal, which typically means people open carrying all over the place. So that's what you're referring to, just for our listeners that may not have been aware.
That's right.
That's the big controversy at the moment.
And we have had events, and I think that it's actually prudent to have some events that are not are gun free. Certain events where people are in altered states. And I know that there's also been events where people have actually asked not to have guns at their site. So we have had it in the past. It was a very unusual request. And that was one of those ones that I had to kind of go, geez, is this something that we want to do? And I talked to a large number of people, a number of groups. They were like, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Now, what have you heard? Are you actually going and talking to different segments? You're doing a convenience sampling. You're not actually going and looking at these different segments. The segment that is actually very interested in RFK is larger than the segment that's outraged about the gun thing. It's just a larger segment.
Mm-hmm.
But you have no polling data or anything to substantiate that.
I think he said he was selling tickets. Right. Well, are you selling?
No tickets.
Oh, I thought he said it's almost sold out. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, the people who've contacted me. Let's just say that there will be. We've actually talked about maybe just making standing room, at the back or something like that, because it's high demand.
Yeah, he's talking to people.
This is related to my question. I did remember it. Like, if the popularity thing is so important, and we're thrilled because RFK has got this great big crowd, and that's who we want at the pavilion, is people who can draw a crowd. Why give any credibility whatsoever to their political persuasion? Why not try to get Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Joe Biden or whoever can bring a crowd? That's the thing that we care about, right?
So in a bottom-up, decentralized format, you're absolutely right. So let's say that you came and you said, I have this person here, and I think he's the cat's pajamas.
Donald Trump.
I'm gonna have to go and find out. Are you right? Is this somebody that is really going to pull down people? Because it's hard to pull people down nowadays.
Donald Trump would definitely.
It's much harder than it used to be.
Donald Trump would definitely pull people in.
I'd go watch Donald Trump. Maybe not if it was a gun-free zone out of principle.
Yeah, so let's stay with Trump as the example, or DeSantis. Either one of them would absolutely pack the pavilion.
I wouldn't want him at Porcfest, but if he was going to be there and it wasn't up to me, I'd go watch Trump. Be that close to a celebrity.
Yeah. So my question would be, if in theory,
so you would have to have
Trump.
A connection with him.
Right.
You would have to go to Dennis and say, "I got Trump."
Yeah, would that be kosher to have this this actual warmonger tyrant speaking on the main stage at Porcfest?
Right. So I am not making a judgment about the person's libertarianness, right? That's what you're suggesting.
But why don't
we
you?
Make judgments?
Why not?
Because you're making the judgment. The person who brings me the person, they said this is something that's appropriate for Porcfest, and then is this a bottom up? I don't make judgments about your hub, so you can have on your hub, whatever you want. You can do the Drag Queen Story Hour, right? That was the big debate. I'm not making this, and people come back to me. So
in
I've
that
actually had
scenario, though, people literally did threaten violence, and you did nothing about it.
Okay, well, we can talk about that separately, but so my point is that you can have what you want on your hub, and the hub that I'm running is not really a hub that is reflective of me. It's not. It's reflective of the campground.
Isn't there a problem with that? It is a
reflection.
I get what you're saying, but if indeed we don't want this to turn into a conservative or an authoritarian or a progressive campsite or campground or event, then doesn't it benefit us to say, no, that's okay. If you want to bring your ultra right-wing warmongering psychopath in the form of Vivek Ramaswamy, if you want to bring this person to Porcfest, then have them at your hub. That would have been, I feel like that would have been the appropriate answer, because now what it sounds like you're saying is, as long as there's enough conservatives on the campground, or as long as there's enough, authoritarian leftists on the campground to support having RFK or Vivek speaking, then they'll get to speak. And they can bring in Trump, and they can bring in DeSantis, and they can bring in Biden or whoever else they want to bring in, as long as there's 100 plus or 200 people who are willing to go see them talk. Is that what you want it to turn into?
We have many different examples of why advertising or putting out the signal to conservatives coming to Porcfest is a bad thing. Like, for one thing, they're not more on our side than the leftists. It's like, I don't understand where that idea comes from. And another thing, Mikey had $300 of shrink last year from his unmanned vending machines that he said he's never had before. There's more conservatives than have ever been there. The one conservative tried to threaten violence against Jeff for being a nudist last year. And I know there's Maj Toure said he is definitely going to, bring violence. I know we can talk about that separately, but there are multiple reasons why you wouldn't want to advertise to people, hey, this is a conservatarian place. I mean, just safety sounds like number one out of the 3 examples I just gave.
So I originally had a question, though. I want to come back to that, which is to say that shouldn't you be there to say, you know what, this isn't right for the main stage at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We don't want to turn this into a conservative party. We don't want to turn this into a warmongering, let's shout down and start killing Mexicans kind of an event. And that's exactly what someone like Vivek Ramaswamy is going to bring to the table. I don't know exactly what RFK is going to say. I hear he's not too good on guns and, some other things he's not so great about. But, is that the kind of audience you want to be bringing to the Porcupine Freedom Festival? I don't think so. I don't think we need these people, Dennis. And you've made this point online that, isn't this great that these people are coming to us? We've got this influence, right? The Free Staters are a political force in New Hampshire. There's no doubt about that. And this is an indicator of that. That's true. But also, we don't need them for Porcfest to be a great event. It's already going to sell out. It's already sold out the campground, with or without RFK, with or without Vivek. So how does it benefit to pander to these people?
So you're making an argument that you should be making to the people who really want to see them.
I haven't met one.
I don't know who those people are.
I've never heard one person say that. I mean, I'm not saying that
Okay, Carlin would want to go see Vivek. Dr. Carlin Boroshenko is a fanatic about Vivek. And normally she's very, very rational when it comes to the things that she says and does. But on this one, she's completely ignoring the fact that he is a warmongering psychopath. And she just said, she blew you off the other day, Aria.
She won't answer any questions about it.
Yeah, we say, here's what Vivek actually said about wanting to go to an actual war with the U.S. military against the cartels in Mexico. And she says, I don't want to have this discussion. You can just ask him in person. As though he's just going to
As if there's not already a video with him saying, let's start a hot war with Mexico.
There's a ton of video, and there's a ton of comments.
My response is, why are you hearing out a warmonger?
Yeah.
So tune them out.
I mean, so there are some people who obviously have some value for these folks, but that doesn't, I don't think, justify a main stage position. I want you to have your chance, please.
Okay. So the main stage position isn't justified by my decision. Now, there are 2 criteria that I use. The first is there demand? Is this something that a lot of people are really interested in coming down to see? The second one is, are they talking about a topic that is of interest to libertarians? And with Vivek, we have Matt Kibbe going to be interviewing him and asking him some good I mean, we actually went through a number of iterations with Vivek because I had trouble with whether, in fact, he could be talking about some libertarian topics.
All right, hold that thought. We're going to continue in hour 3 coming up.
Free Talk Live.
Pushing women to the ground with a camera in her hand, I think a real man wouldn't do that. And you got to be on roids or something to get into that state of mind.
Well, Wayne hit it on the head. If they're not on steroids, and a number of them, some of them are, most of them probably aren't. They're not on steroids, maybe, but they're definitely high on adrenaline. Former drug task force officer, when he started with the police, he would get that adrenaline rush from writing a ticket. And then, of course, he acclimated himself to it, and then he needed something else. He needed to escalate. He needed to have something else. So it got so extreme that he would leave people uncuffed Like he'd bust a coke dealer or something like that, and then just leave them uncuffed on the hopes that they would get up and try to run.
So he kicks some butt.
Right. Exactly.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. regulators have filed 13 charges against the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange and Binance's CEO Changpeng Zhao. The exchange is accused of mismanaging customer funds and dodging U.S. laws. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
In a nearly 140-page complaint, the Securities and Exchange Commission accuses Binance of mixing billions of dollars in customer funds and transferring it to a third party. The SEC also accuses Binance of trading fraudulently to boost the price of assets. In a court complaint, the SEC says Binance acted with blatant disregard of federal securities laws and investor and market protections they help provide. In a statement, Binance said all user assets are safe and secure and will defend any allegations to the contrary. William Denzelo, New York.
California officials say they have evidence that Florida arranged for 16 migrants from Colombia and Venezuela to be flown from the state of New Mexico to California's capital, Sacramento, where they were eventually dropped off outside a church. Last year, Florida and other Republican-controlled states sent migrants multiple times to Democrat-run cities to protest President Biden's border policies. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta called the alleged political stunt shameful and says his office is looking into whether any crimes like kidnapping may have been committed.
It's potentially illegal. It could violate criminal laws. It could violate civil laws. So we're continuing our investigation. We'll get to the bottom of that. We want accountability.
Florida hasn't commented on the allegations. Last year, the state, which is led by Republican presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis, arranged similar flights to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. A judge in Texas has banned lawyers from using artificial intelligence to write their legal briefs after one generated filing was found to be riddled with errors. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Judge Brantley Starr of the Northern District of Texas is now requiring that lawyers submit sworn statements indicating whether part of any legal briefing was generated with AI, and if it was, to confirm a human checked it for errors. This after a lawyer used ChatGPT to prepare a legal brief that was later found to have numerous mistakes, including made-up court cases. But Judge Starr didn't rule out AI's role in the profession, saying the technology could be used in discovery requests, form divorces, and anticipated questions at oral arguments.
And U.S. stocks lost ground Monday after recent gains nearly saw a departure from bear market territory. Investors have been upbeat since lawmakers reached a deal to raise the debt ceiling. The Dow was down 0.6%, the S&P off 0.2%, and the Nasdaq closed the day down 0.1%. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the deadly Friday night rail crash in India. The packed Coromandel Express passenger train collided with a stationary goods train after what officials say may have been some kind of signalling fault. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the scene of the accident on Saturday and warned that there will be stringent punishment of anyone found responsible for the disaster. Sky News Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch at the scene of the tragedy says it has raised fresh questions about the safety of India's ageing system.
There's concerns about lack of collision devices being used, aging tracks, not enough people to work across the system. It's a 170-year-old network, and there are 14 million people every day using the network. And despite those issues, it comes at a time when the government under Narendra Modi is actually trying to expand the number of trains because of the demand. So it's a challenging moment for the country. It's forcing a lot of questions.
And the investigation now getting underway is likely to take on a political dynamic, with opposition politicians already insisting, even before the inquiry begins, that the government bears responsibility for failing to deploy safety features more broadly across the country's rail network. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. U.S. regulators filed 13 charges against the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange, Binance, and its CEO, Changpeng Zhao. California accuses the state of Florida of chartering a plane to fly a group of migrants to the state capital, Sacramento. And a Texas judge bans lawyers from using AI to write legal briefs after one generated filing was found to be riddled with errors. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer.
It's the Onion Radio News. The nation's last remaining themeless restaurant has closed. This is Doyle Redland reporting. A once vibrant era came to an end today when Pat's Place, the nation's last themeless restaurant, closed its doors in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. During the heyday of themeless restaurants, Pat's Place achieved a certain amount of notoriety for its unique non-themed food items and unadorned atmosphere. But according to owner Patrick Baines, the times have changed.
Lately, we've had only a handful of people coming in to gawk at our posterless walls and mundanely named menu items like hamburgers or pancakes, and then they go someplace like the Rainforest Cafe or Johnny Rockets to actually eat.
Plans are now in the works to convert the Pat's Place location into Cedar Rapids' 7th Patty-O Touchdown sports bar and good time internet grill. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and of course, normally you can bring up anything you want. We actually have a lengthy discussion going on here that started at the beginning of the show with the current organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. He is Dennis Pratt, and I think he's still with us, although we've lost his video feed. Dennis, are you there? Dennis?
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes, we have you, and we see you. There you are.
I assumed he just turned his video off.
I actually didn't turn that off. That's interesting. I don't know what happened.
Well, we have you back. All is well. It's
right.
Ian and Bonnie and Aria in the studio over here. We actually do have some callers on the line. I want to get to them, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to really kind of explain yourself here, Dennis. I know there was some nuance or some subtleties that you definitely want to have a chance to get out here on the show. And we were kind of, just to bring our listeners up to speed, if you're just tuning in, we've talked about sort of the history of Dennis being involved in the Porcupine Freedom Festival, how he got here into New Hampshire, his path to liberty, and his success as an activist, by the way, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance Activist of the Year, which is a coveted title. You were awarded that last summer, and for good reason. You're a big-time doer. You hit the ground running when you got here several years ago now, I think at this point, living out in the Seacoast.
He runs bus tours.
Does all kinds of things. He's, I think, you're part owner of the Independence Inn, aren't you, out there?
I was the founder of the Independence Inn and the founder of the Shell.
Right.
The Shell, which is our
very
major,
successful
Liberty clubhouse.
Yeah, the Shell is a hugely successful Liberty clubhouse on the Seacoast.
The Independence Inn recently won some sort of hospitality award, so congratulations on that. I saw Stephen Ness posting about it.
That's really cool. I saw that.
Very nice. So,
and if I sound critical, Dennis, I promise I don't mean to. I like you and I respect what you do. I was worried during the break there that some of what I said sounded like overly critical, and I don't mean to come off that way if it comes off that way. Just to be
well, no, it's actually a lot easier to hear the criticism here because we can hear nuance and we can talk. And I think Twitter, which is kind of more your realm, it's just a harder place to with those few characters to actually make a nuanced discussion.
To be fair, Dennis, I think you post on Twitter more than both Ari and I combined. I don't know about Bonnie; she's on there a lot, so you're probably at you and Bonnie are probably at the same level on that one.
Well, I don't troll as much.
I've really only trolled once in my life. It was just so successful that everyone thinks I'm such a troll.
Are you talking about the Maj troll?
Yeah, I think
yes. It was just a lie.
Oh my God!
It's never
what a troll that was.
It's never immoral to lie to somebody who's threatening violence to try to protect your friends. So yeah, I just straight up lied to him.
You're
and
referring
it was so
to
successful.
Maj Tour, who I thought was a libertarian until he proved he wasn't. This year, because I didn't know that much about him. He's great on gun freedom, but apparently not so great on other things. He had announced he's coming to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and he was going to roll up on any campsite or in his community. He wasn't talking specifically about Porcfest, but he said, if you are doing a drag queen story hour in my community, I'm going to roll up and assault you, and then when I get out of jail, I'm going to come back and do it again, essentially. And you said, well, you better look out at Porcfest because we're going to have...
I didn't say look out. That sounds like a threat. I said, well, don't come to Porcfest because a ton of us are going to be doing drag queen story hours, or kid-friendly drag shows is what I said, on our own sites.
Okay. And so that caused a huge controversy, and a bunch of conservative types people said, we're out, we're not going to Porcfest.
Got almost 100,000 views.
Because of what one person said they were going to do at their campsite. But now,
fun fact,
Aria,
I have confirmed that there will be children at Tranny Story Hour.
You've announced within the last 48 hours, Aria, that you are going to be having a tranny story hour.
Yeah, Bonnie made the thread. I've got to see it through, man.
Yeah, I just don't have the energy to actually see it through. I thought it would what I said, it did accomplish a lot of what I wanted, but it'll be even better when it actually happens.
Yeah, so
I hate kids, but I love trolling, so I'm conflicted. But, the troll is worth it.
I don't think Maj Tour is going to do anything.
I don't think so either.
I think it's an empty threat, but it really was a threat.
But it is a threat.
And I think that does bring us to this other controversy, and we could talk about the main stage. I do want to come back to that because I don't know if you've had a chance to really answer the question, Dennis. But Maj, I presume, is he going to be on the main stage? Is he one of the main stage speakers?
Yes.
Okay,
yes. He will be. So Maj Toure is the reason why he's on the main stage, and I who brought you back, Ian? Who brought you back to Porcfest and to the main stage?
Roger Paxton and you.
That's right. And I keep on hearing about Free State Project bringing you back. I get dragged for you publicly use my name on the negative side, but you don't say who stood up for me. Now, the reason why I brought you back onto the stage is because people wanted to see you. You would fill up the pavilion. I had people threaten they're not going to come back. Important people whom who are key movers and shakers, people who are my friends. They unfriended me, as a matter of fact, because I stood up for you. Now, does that mean that I support everything about you or anything? Does that mean that the Free State Project is support? No. What it means is that the Free State Movement, the people of the Free State Movement, think that you are important enough that they want to hear you. Now,
this is
there was another troll.
This is a false equivalency.
No, it's not. It's the same thing, Aria.
It's the
same damn thing.
No, it's not, because Maj literally threatened violence. Ian has never done that.
Ian said a principled libertarian thing on the radio station, his own radio station, not even concerning Porcfest, and got banned from the Porcupine Freedom Festival for his opinion and people not liking it. Maj Toure has unequivocally threatened violence at Porcfest. First tweet, maybe you can say at Porcfest. Then he went back and tweeted again just to make things clear. If I'm at Porcfest, Porcfest is my community.
Yeah, well, and not just Maj, but also RFK and Vivek and these other characters, these aren't even libertarians. I mean, Maj at least claims to be libertarian, even though he's not.
Who cares?
The rest of them are definitely not. And I appreciate the fact that you have me on the stage, Dennis, and I know that there's always a price to pay when you do something controversial. There's no doubt about that. And
I pay high prices on all of these, on
no
every
doubt.
single one of
That's
these.
why I said I wouldn't wish anybody to be in your position.
And my argument is, look, if this is somebody who the people want to see, the movement wants to see, if this is something that is bottom up driven, and I don't know how many people showed up for, I wanted you on the first year, you couldn't make it, right? So Aria took it. Aria, I think we probably had maybe 150, 200 in there. But it was certainly more than we could have had in a hub. And then when you were on there, I think we had even more.
I don't know if that's true.
On that note, though, what if their demand was there to have Christopher Cantwell give a speech?
That he actually wanted to. Can he talk about it on a libertarian topic? If you really had something where.
Yeah, he used to be a libertarian. He could speak for an hour and sound libertarian.
He could pretend to be a libertarian.
I met him the first year that he came out, and I was like, what is this guy doing here? And everyone says, oh, he used to be a libertarian. I go, how are you making that argument? Anyway.
So if I could get him,
it's not my decision.
But if I could get him,
I am trying.
You
not
would
to
have
make
him on the stage.
If you could assure me that there was a high demand to hear him. So let me give you another example.
There would be
an enormous demand.
I can think of 5 people. And that's just I can't think of 5 people that want to go to RFK Jr.
I think the stage would be packed.
Well,
I think it would be packed.
My email is filled with people who want to go to RFK Jr. And this is the thing.
There's a lot of conservatives out there.
Just because you're discounting them because you don't like them. Look,
no,
I understand these are different segments. The Free State movement is made up of quite distinct segments, and I understand that you guys represent one segment. There's segments that can't stand you guys. I don't
represent anyone but myself.
I will tell you this: I've had higher demands to ban Bonnie than to ban Maj.
But it doesn't matter. This isn't mob rule. It's not, ban Bonnie for nothing.
Mob rule.
Versus.
It is not mob rule. Exactly my point.
Are we going to become a place that accepts violence, or are we not? That's all it is. Are we going to be a place that bans people for free speech, or are we not? That's all it is.
Just to be clear, we don't want to actually have Christopher Cantwell on the main stage at the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
I'm not against it.
But the question was because, he's not a libertarian anymore. He is a white supremacist. And there's a certain...
Yeah, I'm against it.
There's a certain look, right? There's a certain negative look to having the world's most prominent libertarian festival and having a white supremacist on the main stage.
Dennis, you said the movement wants to see RFK. You said those words.
No.
Yes, you did. You said those words. I wrote it down because I have a point to make about it. I don't like this. The fact is, Porcfest is popular enough. WMUR is talking about it on their website. It's popular enough and it represents the Free State Project enough. Having RFK, having Vivek Ramaswamy is... It's trying to represent me, and that's obviously what you're trying to do because you use those words. It's trying to represent the Free State movement, and that's what drives me so crazy. I wouldn't leave my best friends. I'm not one of those people who was just like, oh, I had absolutely no friends in Texas. No one liked me because all I could do was talk about libertarian things. Then I found out there's the Free State Project in New Hampshire, and I moved right away because I had no friends or life or anything going on for me. You try to convince me to leave Texas of the South and just move to Texas of the North. I don't want it to become that. It's not that I dislike conservatives. I don't dislike conservatives. I can be friends with anyone. It's just that if I'm going to pick up, I'm a mover. It's like you change when somebody's here. Oh, well, now you're just somebody who's here. I got to cater to the people who could potentially move and make the Free State Project bigger. Try to convince Bonnie in 2021 who moved here that I should leave.
You're saying that Vivek would not have been an attraction or RFK would have turned you off?
I'm saying that if I wanted to live in Texas, I'd live in Texas where it is now. I wouldn't live in cold northern Texas. Try to convince someone, oh, you need to leave where you live to go to the Free State Project. Oh, and we're just going to turn it into conservative land. It's not that I hate conservatives. It's that it's not being libertarian. There's already a place for conservatives. There's Texas. There's Alabama. There's Florida. There's Mississippi. If I wanted to live in a conservative land, I could live with my parents in Alabama right now with my little brother that I love a lot instead of living in New Hampshire. I want to live in a place that actually is going to be the only place in the world for people like me. That's the only reason I'm here, other than my husband, obviously.
I guess my question is, are we changing Vivek, or is Vivek changing us? Not to be too cliche about it, but I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Is there really any chance that we're going to make him more libertarian? Because that's one of the arguments I've seen in support of him and RFK and these others. Like, well, we have a chance here to like persuade them a little bit. Is that really going to happen, or is it more likely to go the other way?
You're asking me for my personal opinion. Again, that's not how I make my decision. All right. The same argument that Bonnie is making.
It's your
I have heard the same argument about Ian.
Yeah,
and
but
is this what we want to project? I wouldn't be here if we had a pedophile up on the stage. Blah 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 blah, and it just goes on.
Okay, but is Ian a pedophile? Are you calling him a pedophile? Because he's not a pedophile.
That's what people say to him.
But yeah, just because people say that doesn't mean anything. Maj Toure actually did threaten violence. It's not like we're just saying that and it's the same exact. You're saying it's the equivalent of someone calling Ian a pedophile. It's not.
Okay.
Yes, he did. He absolutely did. Unequivocally. And then he made it very clear with his second tweet.
He literally said he would roll up and assault people.
And then when I got out of jail, I'd pay the bail money and get out. You've seen the screenshot. I know you know that this is the truth, and you're just making some weird argument, and you're lying.
No, what you're saying is that he did some virtue signaling on
That's
Twitter,
not what I'm saying.
What we do. And he said some words. Now the question is whether they're true or not. Right? The question is, you're saying, I absolutely believe them 100%. Well, I don't believe you. I do not believe that you actually think that he is threatening you with violence.
It's easy to say when you're not the one being threatened.
You said earlier that you didn't believe him.
No, I said that. Bonnie didn't.
So, what?
Bonnie said that.
You said earlier in this broadcast
I'm sorry.
you didn't believe
I meant to say I said that. Bonnie didn't.
I also don't believe him, but that
I
doesn't
don't
mean
believe he would do it
wasn't a
because he's not
threat.
stupid. Like if it was just him and me, I think he'd probably do it.
Well, I don't know this man. I don't have any way to believe or not believe him. He has 2 strikes.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing.
So here's the thing, right? Bonnie lied. I don't believe Maj was doing some very okay. When I talked to him, and now I have to make a phone call to Philadelphia and talk to Maj Toure about what exactly is it that he means. Yeah, and so I have to go actually through every single step. You know, are you saying this? Are you saying that? And it's not something that is going to be done over Twitter. Twitter is a signaling device.
Yes, and he signaled violence, Dennis. None of the virtue signaling that I or you or Ian or anyone else does on Twitter calls for violence.
Okay, so what they believe that you are calling for violence against children, right? Now, do I believe that you're doing that? No. They believe you do. Now, do I have to
the
call you
equivalent
up
would
and
be
say,
for me to say, I believe you should assault children. That would be the equivalent here. It's not, we're not having a disagreement.
Well, they're thinking it's a sexual assault on children.
We're not having a conversation.
That's what they believe.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they believe because we're not having a dispute about what is and isn't assault. We're having a dispute about whether or not it's okay to threaten whatever you consider assault to be. Right? That's it. And I don't care that he defines, being trans as assault. That's immaterial to the equation.
Being trans, I was talking about the
being trans and under the age of 18, whatever.
Aria Jess is more provocatively than a drag queen most of the time.
And none of it matters because the basic question is it okay to threaten whatever you consider to be assault? Would it be okay for me to threaten if I believed assault to be transing up the kids to go out there on Twitter and say, I'm going to go trans up all the kids? No. That would be threatening assault.
A specific threat is serious and it is worthy of a ban. That is not what we had.
That's easy to say when you're not the one threatened, man.
He did not threaten you, Aria. Where did he?
I didn't say he threatened me
individually. Where did he
I didn't
make
say
a
he threatened me.
specific as?
But saying, "Hey,
so-
that threat's not serious," that's coming straight out of an ivory tower, man.
No, because you're talking as though he is a white trans intellectual. That is not where he's coming from.
I didn't say anything about his skin color, man.
I'm saying that he comes from a different culture. He is talking to people whom you don't talk to.
Okay.
You cannot reach those people. So
all black people are violent idiots. Is that what you're saying?
He is virtue signaling. No, he is virtue signaling.
He said he's not an intellectual and he's black, so therefore, when he says something, it doesn't mean exactly what it means.
He was an intellectual.
You just did. He did. He said
I
you're.
said that she was talking as though he was talking as though he is she. He is not she. She cannot project her interpretation on top of it is that he's saying. What she needs to do is to talk to him individually. Say, are you saying this?
He refused to have a conversation.
Are you saying that? And you have to go.
What is this obsession people have with hearing out people who threaten violence?
Well, now
it's
look,
Colin
Aria,
Barashenko all over again saying,
okay.
"Oh, just hear out the warmonger."
Well, but I could understand the argument that, hey, look, he wasn't clear. It's only 280
Let me read it.
characters.
I've got it right here. Ready?
Okay, go ahead.
If you do a drag queen story hour for children in my community, I'ma pull up and assault you. I'll be arrested. By the time I bail out and you reschedule another one, I'll pull up and smack the F-U-C-K out of you once more because I don't give an F.
Yeah, so I mean that
Smack?
definitely.
Do black people not understand that means to hit? That's not true. I don't believe that.
He definitely threatened assault, and I think what Dennis is saying, I don't agree with this, but what Dennis is saying is that what Maj or these other conservative types are saying was that, oh, well, if you're reading a sex book to my kids, then that's going to be, assault worthy.
That's not what a drag queen story hour is.
That's not what it is, but that's what some of them claim that they believe that it is, which is ridiculous. It's nonsense. But the thing is, when Maj, he was trying to backtrack or whatever it was he was trying to do on this, the announcement was made that Maj is willing to talk to anyone at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And so I said, well, look, great. Why don't we just have a conversation now? Because I can understand, Aria, that maybe he didn't put the nuance in there of, oh, if you're reading a sex book to my kids, then I'll assault you. That's not what he said, but maybe that's what he actually meant. And I'm willing to hear out somebody, give him more than 280 characters. That's why I wanted to have Dennis on the show tonight.
That's where that's exactly where he was. That's what he was talking about.
He refused to appear. I understand you had a conversation with him privately, Dennis, and
I urged him to now. Is this something that I think at this time there was a lot of trolling and a lot of setting him up, and I don't think he trusted you guys.
Well, whatever.
I would love for him to have come on.
How could I trust that person is willing to talk at the Porcupine Freedom Festival? He's saying he's willing to talk there, but he's not willing to talk 2 months in advance. And either way, that's where I think that thing sits. Like I said.
Why? Because after I said NAP violation, which was before I said don't come to Porcfest, he responds to me, no, it's not a NAP violation because if you're showing kids, I don't think he said men dressed as women, but a drag show, then it's inherently violent. So
which is crazy.
It's
crazy.
crazy.
A crazy viewpoint.
I hate that I brought it up because I didn't mean to direct the show this long to this topic. I just wanted to throw that out there. My bad.
Well, the main thing I want to say is that I think that as the curator of the show of the Porcfest, is it not more Dennis's responsibility to curate an audience instead of just cave to the audience? It's like you could get 1 million Republicans up here. Do we want that? Is that what we want?
I don't think Dennis even wants that, which is why I agree with you on this one, Bonnie. I think that by taking the position that, hey, I'm not doing this, you have sort of this dichotomous position that is like, on one hand, you're the organizer, you have to make decisions about the event, and you have obviously made decisions about the event. But on the other hand, you're saying, well, look, I'm not doing this. There's just a bunch of people that want to see this warmongering psychopath, Vivek Ramaswamy, on a stage at a libertarian convention, so I'm going to let him. It's not my fault. I mean, that seems like it's coming from two places at the same time to me, Dennis.
Yeah, I mean, there was another troll who talked about how we had Scott Ritter coming to Porcfest, and there's a group headed by Sarwalk, and they took that on, and can you believe Dennis Pratt is doing Scott Ritter? And frankly, would there be an uproar about that as it was at the anti-war? Yes, as there was for you, there's an uproar. If I think that would fill. I think that would fill for the pavilion.
I think it probably would too, but that wasn't true, right? He's not booked.
No, he said it was a troll.
No, it was a troll. Okay. It was a troll. I mean, you guys are poking each other like crazy. I have to actually go in there and figure out what's true.
All right, there's more coming up here in moments with Dennis Pratt from Porcfest.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. regulators have filed 13 charges against the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange and Binance's CEO Changpeng Zhao. The exchange is accused of mismanaging customer funds and dodging U.S. laws. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
In a nearly 140-page complaint, the Securities and Exchange Commission accuses Binance of mixing billions of dollars in customer funds and transferring it to a third party. The SEC also accuses Binance of trading fraudulently to boost the price of assets. In a court complaint, the SEC says Binance acted with blatant disregard of federal securities laws and investor and market protections they help provide. In a statement, Binance said all user assets are safe and secure and will defend any allegations to the contrary. William Denzelo, New York.
California officials say they have evidence that Florida arranged for 16 migrants from Colombia and Venezuela to be flown from the state of New Mexico to California's capital, Sacramento, where they were eventually dropped off outside a church. Last year, Florida and other Republican-controlled states sent migrants multiple times to Democrat-run cities to protest President Biden's border policies. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta called the alleged political stunt shameful and says his office is looking into whether any crimes like kidnapping may have been committed.
It's potentially illegal. It could violate criminal laws. It could violate civil laws. So we're continuing our investigation. We'll get to the bottom of that. We want accountability.
Florida hasn't commented on the allegations. Last year, the state, which is led by Republican presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis, arranged similar flights to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. A judge in Texas has banned lawyers from using artificial intelligence to write their legal briefs after one generated filing was found to be riddled with errors. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Judge Brantley Starr of the Northern District of Texas is now requiring that lawyers submit sworn statements indicating whether part of any legal briefing was generated with AI, and if it was, to confirm a human checked it for errors. This after a lawyer used ChatGPT to prepare a legal brief that was later found to have numerous mistakes, including made-up court cases. But Judge Starr didn't rule out AI's role in the profession, saying the technology could be used in discovery requests, form divorces, and anticipated questions at oral arguments.
And U.S. stocks lost ground Monday after recent gains nearly saw a departure from bear market territory. Investors have been upbeat since lawmakers reached a deal to raise the debt ceiling. The Dow was down 0.6%, the S&P off 0.2%, and the Nasdaq closed the day down 0.1%. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. We literally had a blue screen of death during the break here on our studio computer.
Did you know that Windows 9, very briefly when it was in beta, Windows 9 never actually released to the public, I don't think. It had a red screen of death.
Did it really?
Yes, and the beta testers hated it.
If you, if the listeners don't know what the blue screen of death is, because I didn't until I met Ian and he started talking about it, it means that the computer just turned itself off and had to restart. And it sucks.
We've been trying to figure out what has been causing that now for weeks and weeks. And, of course, it loves to happen right in the middle of the show when we've got somebody on.
I'm just happy it didn't kick him. I thought he wouldn't be connected
Jitsy's
anymore.
Separate from we use Jitsi for our video conferencing, and that's not the conference room is on the internet. It's not based on the computer. So we just rejoined the room, and Dennis thankfully is still there. Dennis Pratt is with us here tonight. We're talking about the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Dennis, I want to ask you if you have time to go into overtime after the show, because we have 3 hours on broadcast radio, and we have more time in theory after the broadcast radio show is done. We actually have at least 4 calls on hold that we haven't even gotten to yet to talk to you, Dennis. So do you have time can you stay for now it's saying the page is having a problem.
Are you suggesting a freer Talk Live?
Yeah. Dennis, can you hear me? I just had to jump into the chat room again.
Yeah, I can hear you. Did that happen again? Did you get
no? This was some other issue that just happened. Anyway, it's one of those things where it rains, it pours. It's always like that. So the question I was asking you there was are you willing to continue this discussion after the radio show ends? We would essentially take a quick break and hit the record button on an audio recording, and then we'll pop that into the podcast as an extended show.
You can cuss and there'd be no breaks.
Yeah, you can say the S word on if we do that.
Yeah, I can say a little bit longer. I mean,
okay.
I don't think you understand that I have a lot of work.
No, I get it. Well, look, just to be clear, you had told me that one of the concerns was that you wouldn't have enough chance to express yourself, and that's why we've gone for literally the whole show here. But now we have all
literally
of a sudden,
every
phone line is now lit up here, Dennis. So people want to either say things or ask you questions. So let's just jump into that, shall we?
Absolutely.
Because people have been waiting very patiently. Let's go with the person who's been on the longest here. Caller, you are on Free Talk Live with Dennis.
Hi, Dennis. It's Mikey. How are you doing?
Mikey, are you talking directly into your phone? It sounds a little bit tinny.
Oh, hold on.
Sounded a little better there.
What is it?
It did briefly.
A little better.
Okay, is this better?
That is definitely better. What did you do?
Okay, I have no idea.
Okay.
Well,
whatever it was, it worked. Go ahead. You're on with Dennis.
Okay, so first I want to say a couple nice things about Dennis, because I know there's been a lot of issues between me and him the past few weeks. I do have some positive things to say. So I do like what he's done with the schedule system. I think it's good that we have a schedule. And because in previous years we haven't had any sort of, I don't want to use the word centralized, but we haven't had any sort of, clear schedule. That's a good thing. I think the hubs are a good thing. Some people don't really like how that's run, but I think it's good to have that promoted. But there's a lot of issues that have cropped up over the past, year and so. I think it really started with I don't really want to bring this up again, but the theft that I had last year. And I don't hold Porcfest really responsible for that, but the issue I had was ignoring that and diminishing it and putting it under the rug. And then there was another issue with that whole debate between the body freedom guy and those other two conservatives. And I just find there's a lack of delegation and not addressing these issues. And then the only thing that ended up happening with me is that I got banned from the original Telegram chat. Then I got banned from other Telegram chats. I made an alt. That got banned from all the chats. And then I found out I was banned from the Facebook group. And then I posted my Jewish Libertarians Hub back in the end of April, and that was never posted. And then I'm now told that I'm not welcome at Porcfest, and that's all I've really gotten. So I'm just looking for some clarification on that, because my understanding is that the other organizer does not agree. I don't want to put words in that person's mouth, but does not agree with that. And what's the deal here, and what are the accusations? I mean, like they said, you have someone on the main stage who has advocated violence, and then someone who supposedly is an internet troll is not welcome.
I don't know which one to talk about. Let me first talk with the theft. Did you report the theft at the time to the Park Rangers?
I did not discover it until the end. I do my book work at the end of the festival.
So what is it that you wanted me to do to address it? You basically trolled for days and days, raking across the volunteers and raking across all the people who work on there, and saying that it was all their fault, and saying that it was the attendees who did it. When we had trouble that year, we had trouble with some people who were actually in the campground, the seasonals. We had trouble with seasonals, and we had trouble with an employee. We had to actually remove one of the employees. So you just started making wild accusations and trolling like crazy, calling everybody names. And I'm going, well, what do you want us to do, Mikey? And your solution is that Porcfest has gotten too big, and that we're bringing in the bad people and they're stealing from you, and you have no proof whatsoever that it was our attendees who did it. I just thought that my heart goes out that I don't think you should have lost money. Okay, so let's put it out. That's very unusual to happen, but you don't know who did it. And yet you're making wild accusations about the attendees, when our attendees that year, our attendees were just absolutely fantastic. There was a girl who had her bicycle damaged, and the attendees put a whole bunch of money in to buy her a new bike. There was money lost, a large chunk of money that was actually for the porcupines. And the woman came down. She went to Park Rangers. And she goes, I just lost all the money that we have for the porcupines. And the Rangers had it because one of the attendees picked it up and took it down to the Ranger thing. It was just cash. Now that's the type of people that we have at the attendees, and the people who are the Park Rangers. They bend over backwards to handle things and to support things. So you come late, and you say, okay, this happened all the way in the past, and what do you want me to do? What was it that you wanted me to do? I'm not going to truncate the size of Porcfest. I'm not going to turn it into the OG party of the past, because we're actually succeeding on the measures that I want. I think it's terrible that what happened to you. I think it was way out of line what you did, and it was just. I don't like the volunteers being castigated. They spend, hundreds of hours to service you. They don't make any money, Mikey. You're making money. They make zero money. I make no money. I spend thousands of hours. I make no money. You make money on Porcfest, and yet you're the one coming at me for what? What do you want me to do about you losing $300? You didn't say anything at the time, and I don't even know what we could have done at the time. But you didn't say anything at the time, and you come back, and then you're blaming me for it. How am I? It was like, Mikey, you get into these things where you are accusing people and being extraordinarily cruel, extraordinarily callous, and it's like, what did the person do to deserve this? What did the park rangers do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve this?
I mean, I think that's a total misrepresentation of things. I wasn't blaming the attendees per se. I was blaming the large size of it makes it unwieldy. And I'm not saying it needs to go back down to 1,000 people or something. I think 2,000 is a good number, and it should be a mixture of veterans and new people. I was a new person once. So were you. We are all new once. I'm not looking for the $300 back. What I was looking for was, a validation, acknowledgement that there was an issue. And I think the issue actually has been corrected in that we're going to have a little bit more of a gatehouse at the thing. And I don't think it was attendees. I think it was townies that came in, and it was just difficult to, figure out who was who. And when you get to a large size festival, there's a lot of problems. And I understand the want to grow things, but at the same time, there's people who want 5,000 people at the campground, and that's obviously not possible. But it was, that's water under the bridge at this point. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm just saying that's where I think this started. And
I think Mikey's probably right. And sorry to interject. I think you're probably right about townies being responsible, because if I remember correctly, that was the same year that someone snuck in at night and spray painted graffiti all over.
No, that was the year before. That was the year before. That was a townie problem.
That was a seasonal, I think.
Okay, well, never mind. Then I had the timeline wrong anyway, so sorry.
This last year, we had a problem with one seasonal and one employee, and we had to actually get rid of the employee. It was a serious problem. I mean, you talk about, it's a gigantic festival, and we do have issues. We have serious issues that we have to deal with. It's not trolling issues. It's serious issues, and we do deal with that, and we deal with that with some prejudice.
So, Dennis, I guess the question I'm more curious to...
A lot of people troll, but just because someone trolls doesn't mean every issue they bring up is a troll, right?
Well, but yeah, it does make it hard to take somebody seriously if all they're doing is trolling. So I can understand why that would frustrate someone. But Dennis, I do want to get the answer to the question of what... There's a rumor that Mikey's been banned. He's going around saying he's been banned. Is that true? And can you express as to what the reason is for that?
Yeah, it was a denial of service. It was a denial of service attack. I had one and only one meeting with the hubs who wanted to attend. These are primarily newbie hubs that have never actually been to Porcfest. There are some older hubs that were there. Somebody camped on, and I came on, and the person was camped on. And when we started the meeting, they started canceling people and kicking people out. We lost a lot of people. We actually wrestled with them back and forth. Finally, we kicked that person out. He came back, kicked him out again. Mikey came back. Mikey wasn't invited to that meeting.
We're talking about an online conference or something?
That's right.
Why do you think Mikey was the person who was doing all of this?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because one, he wasn't invited to the meeting. He wasn't supposed to be at that meeting. He did not receive an invitation. He was not invited to that meeting. This
is software that you were using, right? Hold on, because I want to make sure you said a DOS attack, and I want to make sure I understand. You were using some like Zoom or Jitsi or something to facilitate this meeting?
Jitsi. Yep.
I don't think Mikey has the technical chops to execute a DOS attack.
All he was doing was he was going in there and he was kicking people out of the conference.
Anybody that's there first would have the administrative
gotcha.
ability to do that.
And so he was actually controlling the meeting and kicking people out so that we couldn't actually have the meeting.
I see. Okay.
Now we eventually wrest this control, but this is a direct attack on Porcfest, and so there's two ways of really getting kicked out: a direct, specific threat of violence or violence, and certainly theft. So some direct NAP violation. And this is a direct NAP
But why
violation.
do you think this was Mikey, other than the fact that Mikey later came to the meeting?
Well, because we kicked this guy out, he came back. We kicked him out, he came back. We kicked him out, Mikey came back.
Well, Mikey
wasn't supposed to be there.
He called into the show a week or two ago, and he said that he thinks this is why you banned him, because of some things that people had told him, but he denies that was him.
Well, he's right
Why
here
would he
right
come
now.
in with his correct name?
Mikey, were you the person that was in that chat room doing the things that Dennis is referring to?
I did not.
Okay. Thank you for the call tonight, Mikey. I appreciate it. I don't think we can go any further on this particular question. But let's go on here. We've got, we're just going in order of who's been on hold the longest. We have Phoenix on the line, calling from Chicagoland. You're on Free Talk Live with Dennis Pratt.
Phoenix.
Hey, guys. So I will try to be as brief as possible because I know there's not much time. I was brought on this year to do production for Porcfest at the Pavilion, which I consider a huge honor and a great opportunity. I'm really excited about it. But Dennis, I wasn't aware that RFK was going to have this no gun zone prior to agreeing to come on, and I'm still willing to do it, even considering the allegations with Maj Touré. He's going to be on the main stage. I'm still absolutely willing to do it as much as I ever was. But it is concerning that at a libertarian anarchist freedom festival, an individual would be invited in that would be capable or given the authority to deny individuals' ability to protect themselves. One of the things that I truly love and appreciate about Porcfest is its open gun culture. And I've never felt as comfortable and as safe as I ever have as I do at Porcfest. And being in charge of filming at the Pavilion, I'm responsible to be there. I have to be there. So given, and this isn't being, facetious or making a light of it at all, but given RFK's history with his family, it does give me pause to say, how safe am I really going to be there filming this man when there's a no-gun zone?
Yeah.
I mean, could you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, you are... Being there is totally voluntary. If you have any qualms, as a matter of fact, I talked to all the volunteers. I said, if you have any qualms, we can find someone else to do that. So if you have any qualms, please bow out for that event. You don't have to do that event. There's no reason for you to do that event.
There's multiple people that are going to be available for it, but it was just something that crossed my mind, and it was something that was concerning. I know one of the arguments that you had made was it's kind of a property rights issue where, if it's your hub, you get to delegate what the rights are. It just seems
no. I don't. It's not that I delegate what the rights are. I delegate what. I don't delegate rights. I set the conditions for coming in. Right. So you come onto my property. You come into my house, and I may say you can't smoke pot. And you go, that's my right to smoke pot. And you go, no, not in my house. Right now, I rent the Pavilion. Okay, and I say you can't smoke. Now I didn't even know that there was a no smoking. There's no smoking cigarettes, and that's Constance, the other organizer. She said that, and she has a reason for it. She said it. I'm going, okay, that's fine. It's her place, and ultimately during Porcfest, it falls back onto Constance. I'm in charge of Porcfest from July through June 18th. Then fulfillment falls onto Constance. She's been working and preparing all this time for fulfillment. So that's the pork rangers and the porta johnies and the facilities people and the free aid and the.
I think the dispute that I'm having here is that you say it's your pavilion and you set the rules and so on, but you won't set the rules about what attendees are appropriate to speak there. Like you'll set some rules, but not others. And you seem to.
No, that's not true. That's not true. So every single person who was there, who's speaking there, I entered into intense negotiations about what it was that they were going to talk about. Vivek, for example, was the hardest. Okay. I actually rejected, I think, 4 different proposals. We came to, we couldn't do it. And, finally, we kind of worked on this deep state thing, right? So he actually believes, first of all, he believes that there is a deep state, and, I too. So what is the deep state? And then he believes that it's actually reformable, which I don't believe. Right? He believes that he can actually go in there. He is promising that he's going to go in there and reform the deep state. Now I'm going, okay.
Like Trump.
He's a liar.
Okay,
He's a scumbag.
Like Trump.
I don't understand what that means or anything like that.
I got to give it to him though. That's a take I have never heard before.
Okay. Now.
Isn't that what Trump said he was going to do?
That's exactly what Trump said. Drain the swamp.
So what did I do? I went and found Matt Kibbe to go and interview him on this particular thing. So what it is, it's a Free the People interview of Vivek around what is the deep state, how intense is it, and is it actually reformable? Now, I think that that's damn interesting talk. Now, Vivek thinks he has a plan. I don't believe he does. It'll be interesting to see. That finally rose to the level where I said, that sounds to me fairly libertarian.
It does sound like you made it a little more tolerable by pulling the strings that you did.
Every single one of those people, I went into intense negotiations. Larry Elder came in and he said that he wanted to do this and that and this. And then the big thing he finally he wanted to do minimum wage. I scoffed. I said, we can teach more about minimum wage. Okay. So what is it that we really want from Larry Elder coming to us? That's just unique and interesting. That's of particular interest to participants, enough that they're going to come down. Now, there's a lot of people who like Larry Elder. I'm not one of them. I'm not a I love how you guys have. I think it's primarily Arya or someone. People are saying he just wants this because he likes these politics. I can't stand politics. I can't stand politicians.
Okay.
I'm not even going to be in on these things, Can
we get back to Porcfest? One thing I want to say is I have never made the claim that I should be allowed to go onto something that whoever's property it is, it's definitively not my property, and say that they can't have a no-gun zone. My thing is more back to how you characterized it earlier, that Porcfest represents the movement, and I don't think that politicians should be representing me. I don't want to be out there playing on the same team right next to Dennis Pratt. If playing on the same team as Dennis Pratt means catering to politicians, federal politicians.
Really Bonnie, you've said this multiple times. Multiple times I've said that's not what whatever it is that you're saying.
Said earlier.
Okay, so I'm contradicting because I may have misstated it, or you may have misheard it. But that what is going on that main stage represents the Free State Project is absolutely the opposite of what is.
You said that Porcfest represents the movement, and Porcfest is absolutely represented by what's on the main stage.
It reflects the movement. It reflects the movement. So
I don't want RFK reflecting me or whatever you mean by that.
No, we have political people who invite politicians, and denying that there's a large segment that is very interested in RFK, that they, all the arguments that you said, does this make sense? Does that make sense? That segment believes it. That segment believes it, and that is why they want RFK there. They want RFK there. They want RFK so that Lynn Ulbricht can ask. So RFK is the only one who's come out and said that he wants to pardon Snowden. He wants to pardon Assange. Okay, so here's the question, right? Will he pardon Ulbricht? Would he pardon the Crypto Six?
No.
Are those things that are on the table?
I'm pretty sure that it's not. I mean, it's a federal politician. I don't think that just because someone says a thing means anything. The other thing is, if it just has to do with mob rule or democracy, what if I somehow got enough people to just say, anyone who talks, I'm not saying I would do this, but what if I said anybody who talks badly about the trans community, they can't be representing us at the Porcfest, and then more people agreed with me on that, and then would that just be how the Free State Project should be represented? I don't think so, because I think people...
I totally agree with you. That's not it. You are misunderstanding it, and yet you're going a mile a minute, Bonnie.
If I can interject real quick, guys, I think this whole thing really speaks to an ever-present argument and concept within libertarian philosophy of how do you grow it big enough and fast enough and still maintain an adherence to the true.
Hold that thought, Phoenix. We're going to continue this here.
Phoenix actually has a good point.
We'll let him make that full point here in a moment. Dennis, you're to stick with us for at least a little bit. We still have at least 3 more callers for you here. So thank you, radio listeners. This will be on our podcast later. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting service